Quick and dirty sometimes works well.
That's right.
Okay. We ran out of 3Xs and 2Xs. I already reordered them, and they should be here like next Monday. So anyone who orders them will get them next week. But I think.
Oh, so you have them at home, so you have to ship them out. So it's.
Yeah, but that's part of the cost. It's built into the cost. I had that $10 for the quick ship, and right into the cost. Okay, I think we're good here.
So Casey, did you know Ben from previously, or?
No, so what happened was a guy I met LARPing here in Massachusetts. There's a big LARP convention every year.
Yeah.
And my wife, she's a LARPer instead of a role player by her nature.
Yeah, not tabletop, but LARP.
Yeah, so there's a big con, and in our first year of dating or whatever, she had told me about this, and I was like, well, that sounds great. Let's look at it, sign up for it. We made costumes. Actually, she made costumes, helped and whatnot. And there was like a Game of Thrones LARP. And I was like a Stark from like 500 years before the TV show. Cool. So I had this full like wolf fur armor and my swords and all that stuff. We had a great time. Well, at one of these conventions, I forget the name of the convention, and I've linked to it in the past on the show. But I met a guy and we had good fun LARPing, playing together. He is good friends with Ben, the author.
Gotcha.
And so he and I are Facebook friends, and he had posted about going to one of Ben's book signings. And I said, oh, you know the author of this book? And I, said, we'd love to have him on the show. And this was before I'd even talked to Jay about it.
That's
so
perfect.
I just kind of,
dude, you got carp, for that. That's awesome. That was smart.
Yeah, when we want guests, that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I'm causing the feedback. There we go.
That's cool.
But yeah, so then Ben saw my comments on his friend's Facebook thread, and we just got in touch, and I said, dude, we'd love to have you on. This is what we do. Here's the Twitch channel. So I've told him we're going to be really interested in any information he can share on Greyhawk sales versus other settings, but just in general, it's a neat book.
Yeah.
I ordered it right away, got it the next day, I think last week, and I have 10 pages left to go. I've been reading it at lunch.
I've read it actually all of it. So I've read it all. Yeah, I got it last week, so I've had a week to roughly
awesome.
I think 7 days. So I read it all.
Like, damn it, I'm on chapter 26. And I don't want to go too much into detail before he's able to.
The last chapter is basically when Wizard of the Coast took over, or after they took over.
And that was all new stuff for me. I have never been a historian of this topic.
No, I've read most of the Playing at the World.
Blue Box is already raiding in here.
Oh, cool. Yep.
All right. You guys are early. You guys are really early, which is... let's watch the Troller Games ad here, the brand new one on the new
cool.
character generator program. So for everyone from Blue Box, hang in there. Welcome. We're going to show this real quick. But it's great to see you, John and crew.
Yep.
So here's the new generator. I ran this when John was here last Friday, too. So I put it in my rotation. So thank you so very much. Hey Keith, waiting for our special guest still. Hey, Josio, good to see you.
Yeah, are you sure he can? He knows how to get here on Zoom.
I imagine so.
Okay.
I just resent it to him.
Perfect. Yep.
Anyway, I've never been a historian of this particular topic.
No, me not that much either. But it is fun to dig in, because it's like it's good to know the history of something you're passionate about.
Right, absolutely, and I think hot on the heels of I had just finished
Wanted Castles and Crusades.
Game Wizards.
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't
Troller
played that
Games.
one, so I need to get into. Yeah.
This one's very academic and focuses on the pre.
Yeah, it's Troller
Lorraine.
Games. Yeah. Oh yeah. So, yeah. CNC.
So reading them back to back was very interesting, and I was just leisurely reading Game Wizard since I got it.
Yeah. And also,
and then I was like, "Oh crap! I got to finish it because now I got to start."
Yeah. But John Peters is playing it. The world is interesting because he takes up all the history before how we got to D&D, so to speak, which is all the way from 200, 300 years ago, and ancient history all the way up to D&D. And so that is interesting from that perspective. Really, I haven't gone to the really last bits of John Peterson's book. I need to.
There will be giveaways tonight, everyone. So thank you. Boom, boom, boom. Awesome. So it looks like everyone got... I love it when I send out stuff and I send it and everyone gets it early. So good. You got your Mike Disney print. That's great to hear. That was from Sunday. So actually 2 days. All right, that's not bad. Yeah, awesome. The Mike Disney Overlord print. And he's got a new one that'll be for this year. We'll be sending them out shortly too. So, everyone, Jeremy was awesome from Gamescape on Sunday. I mean, the new stuff is unbelievable. And Rob Phantom, you got the first half of the Scriptorium, Haunted Woods Scriptorium. You get the second half when I get it next month. Oh, good. This was good. Everyone got everything. I gotta appreciate that.
You have to understand, we're that kind of audience that have everyone has everything.
Really cool to hear. Not yet, Chubb. I haven't started it yet. Haha, gotcha. I got you and not Casey. Wow. Oh, I did get Casey earlier. There we go. I see it now. That's awesome. Of course, Taryn. It's been another busy work week of work and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing a render in the background here, rendering Altamira. It's gone 19 hours. I've been away from my computer most of the day here, so...
That's awesome.
Yep, so it's so
we're going to come on early and we're going to chat until... because Ben's not on yet, so we'll talk. We'll talk what's coming on. We'll do, like, shout-outs now. I'll set the giveaway up, too. Look at that long shot. Nice. Thanks. So, Moose, you and others are keeping that Tim head as the 10th most popular emote on my channel, believe it or not. So, this is inside the Turtles #1, and all the, all the animated ones are in the top 10. Yeah, so they're all right in there. Oh, you did, Mike? Nice. Oh, I love that. All right, Mike. I'll send that to Jeremy after the show, okay? Good. Long shot. You got yours, too? Here he comes, Ben.
Perfect.
Look at that timing. Thanks, John. Hello, Ben. We're in Preludes. Hi. You don't see me.
That's okay. That's why I grabbed my son, because I was...
Yeah, awesome. What's his name?
Simon.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Simon.
Hi. Can't see me.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. Can you say hi, Simon?
Oh, he saw it already? Oh, good, Mike. That's awesome. He's doing all the Twitch stuff here.
Hi. Hi. There you go. I'll just run him down to my wife in a minute.
No problem.
Come back upstairs with a beer.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes. We encourage drinking and chatting.
Well done. And I have a better microphone that I'll be using in a second. If I plug it in, though, he can't hear, and then he gets bored.
Yeah,
No problem.
He has your stream countdown to watch, which he's fascinated by.
Oh, yes. As things happens. Yep.
You want to say anything else?
Ben, thanks. Bent metal, thank you. Lots of fun things. I'm really excited about this discussion, and thank you, Casey, for making this happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Ben for agreeing. We'll get into that once he's dealt with Simon and
yes.
And we're just running adverts right now, Ben.
Yeah, well, we got an intro screen now, so special guest. I pilfered every chart off of your Twitter feed, so
Good. I applaud you.
I got them all, every single one, up to a day or two ago. So
I also have some sales data I should share with Ben at some point. I'll get into that during our chat.
Yeah, well, and I posted the most controversial one today. Yes, what? What's up? I posted the most controversial one today, which was my guess about how many players were playing AD&D in 1998. And I guess 2 million. And of course, I gave my logic there. And as I was expecting, everyone has an opinion, which is actually wonderful. It's really nice to see like everybody digging in, being like, "This is right, this is wrong," because it's fun.
You're so passionate about it. So
yeah, exactly. And nobody's like, "You're all so stupid." Everyone's pretty well behaved. So
that's a little shocking.
I was just going to say that.
Given the community.
That we've improved over the years.
Well, the one interesting thing was, at one point I was like, I bet 50% of the people that bought a Dungeon Master's Guide never played AD&D. And one person was like, that number's way too low, and a TSR alum was like, that number's way too high. So it was interesting that couldn't even get agreement on that. But with 5 minutes to go, I'll run him down to his mom.
Yeah, run him down there. Run him down there real quick. I'll do a couple quickie. Quickie.
Say bye-bye.
Yeah, run him down there real quick.
Bye-bye. Let me turn off my video so you don't see my messy room.
That's okay. There you go. Ben will be right back as he takes care of his son there. Good evening, everyone. Great to see you all. I'm J.K. Lurgazumba. Thank you for coming on. I got Casey Brown, living Greyhawk aficionado, who made this happen. Yes. Bandit Kingdoms and all the way, and the great Adam B. Meyer with me as Ben Riggs is on, which is a wonderful thing. So just a couple. Oh, Wanred, I think that'll hype train us, man. Oh, hype it up!
Wow. Yep.
Already early. So some quickie announcements. We're waiting for Ben to come back, and then we'll really get into the meat of this discussion, which I'm really excited about. Virtual Greyhawk Con sign-ups start August 15th. So please, if you're going to submit a game, please do. If you're going to register, please do a couple days before so we can just get a feel if we are short on games. I still have a couple open highlighted stream spots wow, Fuzz, thanks. Highlighted stream spots that are not taken yet. In particular, I got 2 on Sunday. Rest. I think I might have one I could squeeze someone in on a Friday as well. So we got a lot of really good things going on here. Let me set the giveaway up here. That may pop us over. Classic D&D. All right, so we're gonna do some classic D&D reprints tonight. All right, I got your choice of 2, and I got some new C's here, these are great. These are old classics. Castanamir and To Find a King and the Bane of Llewellyn. So all 3 of them, along with Crucible of Freya, your choice, Book of Taverns, Veiled Society, and if that doesn't tickle your fancy, I got some other things here too. So
you're drowning in reprints here.
Drowning in Patrick reprints. Yeah. Yes, absolutely drowning in them, which is awesome.
Patrick is a madman.
Yeah, Patrick is a madman, along with a lot of people in the community. So, note that. Also note, let me flip over here real quick while we're just waiting for him to come back. Tomorrow night, adventure number 964. This is going to be interesting. It's called The Truce. I got the Normal Headhunters meeting up with the... Thanks, Agamaran. I can never say... that's a South Jersey slurring of speech. The Normal Headhunters are always fighting the Cockatrice Riders of Pasquarel, and they've offered them a non-hostility truce I wonder what the deal about that is, and that's the adventure starting. But the big one is Saturday night. Why isn't that flipping over there? And then we're going to see some legends, along with a brand new player. And we're going to see Ed Greenwood and Anna. Right? Ed Greenwood, Anna Meyer, and hopefully I hit the right one. Mark Meir, Tony, Eric Boyd, and Eric Mengi. What a group that's going to be. Mark Meir, if you know him, voice actor, did the main character in Mass Effect, a lot of other shows. So he's got an interesting character. And
Ed hanging in there, doing all right.
Ed's hanging in there. Yeah, he's really looking forward to playing. He just says he needs it.
Good.
Yeah. So he's hanging in there, which is good to see. So thoughts on? Thank you. I think I gotta follow. There we go. Let me flip back here. Screen. We got a hype train already going here, Ben, for you. So yeah, let me get back to the main screen here. Ben Riggs, everyone. Ben, thank you so very much for coming. Really appreciate it. I know you've been doing some of the circuit, which I've seen. That's great. I mean, I have a feeling that is your book more popular than you thought? Is it going well?
I'm going to say yes.
That's awesome.
I thought the book was going to do well, but like we were beating James Patterson in some categories this past week. I was not anticipating that out the gate. And I'm not
number one in pop culture was cool.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I was not anticipating that like then. I figured it would take time for people to find the book, and I believed that for some people it's going to be an incredible volume. But I didn't think that it would be found by its audience quite this quickly, but it has been, and better to be beating James Patterson than to be losing to him.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. And once again, Casey, thank you so very much for arranging this.
Well, we got to thank our mutual friend, Aaron.
Okay.
Aaron, I met Aaron at InterCon, a New England LARPing con. We had great time together a couple of years ago. I think we were working together to do whatever our machinations were in this event. And just as two 40-something-year-old white guys in this sea of nerdery LARPdomness, we just kind of bonded a little bit while we, so when awesome. Aaron posted that he was going to one of your book signings, I was like, oh, wow, you know this guy? And then that allowed me to reach out to Ben, and then here's Ben. So we should just do a real quick introduction to Ben of who we are and why we're interested in his book. Jay, why don't you tell him what you're doing here on Twitch real quick?
Okay. So my name is Jay Scott, a.k.a. Lord Gazumba. I have what is believed to be the longest ongoing Greyhawk campaign in existence. It's been going on for 42 years, since 1980.
Wow.
It's probably one of the three longest period. We've been playing constantly. We have talk shows like this, and we also have Gabbard on Sunday night. Have a lot of the community, like for example, I have Ed Greenwood who plays in my Greyhawk game on Saturday nights, once in a blue moon. So Ed's coming on. We have the Gygax. We have all sorts a lot of big people in the community. Plus, we really promote. Hey Bones, we really promote the old school Greyhawk community here, keeping Greyhawk alive. Thank you everyone for that hype train. So that's what I'm about. I've been streaming 4.5 years. I'm a Twitch partner. And we're just cranking it up here, and we're trying. And we just love discussion. Old school discussion, legends. We had Vecna. We discussed Vecna last week. We talk about crafting. We talk about whatever the community wants to hear. Bring up a lot of topics, a lot of really obscure things, and it's going very well. So thank you for coming on. But
my pleasure.
I'm dwarfed by Anna here, so Anna, go ahead.
No, not really. I played D&D since 1980, so yeah, a bit over 40 years, and I'm a professional fantasy cartographer. So for like 20 years I've been mapping, and for the past 10 years it's been my full-time job to do fantasy mapping, and I'm specializing in Greyhawk mapping. But I map Midgard for Kobold Press and a bunch of others for other publishers too, over a dozen publishers now over the past 10 years. But I have a Patreon adventure and what else. So my main thing is to do Greyhawk maps. That's my
amazing.
main passion. Yeah. So,
Nice.
so I keep doing that and some other stuff too. And then I love to hang out on and help out Jay a bit and hang out here to talk D&D and Greyhawk and stuff.
It's a great world if you can if there can be someone working full time on Greyhawk maps. That's fantastic.
Yeah, a little bit other stuff, but that's my main stuff. So yeah, I have some hundreds of patrons, like almost 400 patrons. That keeps me happy. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron and I work together on projects. We're doing a Hawk set right now for one of the cities in my campaign with Troller Games. So we got a lot going on. We got a lot of really wonderful things going on in the community. And there's a lot of people who are really, it's not just us. Without the community here, we don't exist. So yeah, absolutely. And Casey's the man here. So,
I'm the troublemaker.
no.
From BK. So yeah.
Yeah, the short version is I've been playing D&D since Beckme. When I'm 48 years old, so I'm right in that sweet spot to where a lot of this history in your book was very arcane to me, stuff that I hadn't paid attention to as a kid, so it was great. And then I found myself, your references to Walden Books in your book, by the way, I was like, oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. I used to work at a Walden Books in like 2000 and something after I got out of the Army. And that's where I was introduced to Living Greyhawk by some patrons who picked up a copy of the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. And I was a former Greyhawk Forgotten Realms nerd as a kid. So I said, oh, what the hell is that? And they said, oh, there's this thing called Living Greyhawk. I was at College Station, Texas, A&M is. And they said, you should come play it. So I joined the Living Greyhawk community and became a author and then a volunteer administrator and then a triad member. Those were the regional admins. Had a roommate who was a circle member. That's a campaign level admin. And then after the campaign ended in 2008, I noticed that Wizards of the Coast was making no effort to preserve Living Greyhawk history, the adventures, none of it, even though they said it would all be canon. And so I wrote a book specifically about the Bandit Kingdoms during Living Greyhawk and had a DMCA notice from Wizards of the Coast that I successfully fought off because they thought I was republishing adventures, but this is just a catalog. So I self-published that bad boy in 2012. So I'm very excited to have like a real author here because you actually have a publishing house as opposed to me where I just self-published it.
Yeah, or me.
So that's my shtick. I am very focused on the Bandit Kingdoms in Greyhawk, but I have a master's in publishing. So your book to me was like this great intersection of my love for publishing, even though I don't work in it, and role playing and the history. I also have a history degree. I'm way too many schools in my background, but that's why I had to reach out to you and get you to come on.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm assuming that
yourself. Yeah.
Oh, tell me about myself. I can do that. So let's see. I'm a teacher, writer, podcaster, journalist, historian. I've had a podcast called Plot Points for about 10 years. This book started when I was writing for Geek and Sundry, back when Geek and Sundry was more of a going concern. And I was assigned an article to explain to millennials that D&D wasn't always made by Wizards of the Coast and that it used to be made by a company called TSR in Wisconsin. And I'm in Wisconsin, so I just reached out to a bunch of the TSR alumni still in the area, started talking to them. They pointed me to business folks at TSR. And it was kind of like nobody had ever talked to them before. Everyone just kind of like listened to the creatives, and which was fine enough. But the business people started telling me things that knocked my socks off. One article became 3 articles, and then I was like, oh, I'll write a 10,000 word PDF and put it on Kickstarter. And 5 years later, I had 100,000 words. And I got an agent and sold it to St. Martin's Press. So that's kind of the story of where the book came from. And let's see, I married a Canadian, and now I have a son. I lived in Egypt for 2 years. I taught in Japan for a year. I taught in China for a year. So that's probably the thumbnail sketch.
Awesome.
So you just answered my first question. How the hell did you get interested into this deep dive into the TSR Wizards of the Coast history, and how did you make contact? Because your book is chock full. It's a narrative run through, which unlike say Game Wizards, which is much more dry and crunchy, it's still a good book. Yours is, I talked to Jim Ward, who Jay has had on the show. You know, I talked to the artists, I talked to the creative directors in the business, and I'm like reading this going like, how the hell did you get these people to agree to talk to you?
It was one thing led to another. I had a lot of people vouching for me, probably TSR fiction writer and editor Jim Lauder was the kind of the first key who did a bunch of vouching for me. And as people started to talk to me, and as they started to hear my follow-up questions, I think they got really invested in getting the story told, which led to people sending me documents. Like I have a history degree, but I am not bragging about my research abilities on this book, because my research procedure was sit at home and wait for people to send me stuff that I didn't ask for. That's amazing. Like the best example of that is.
Yeah. That's what we got here.
This.
Gotta love stuff.
So, back in 1997, when Peter Adkison was buying TSR, he had a binder that he put all of his important documents in, the instructions on how to get to the hotel from the airport, everyone's salary, letters from Dave Arneson asking to be put in charge of TSR, sales numbers, some thoughts on a D&D animated TV show that Mattel would support. And apparently at some point he just left it in Lake Geneva. A TSR employee picked it up, held it for 25 years, and then gave it to me.
Nice.
Wow, that is like
that's
an
that needs to be
level.
At a university when you're done.
yeah.
Like with the Tolkien collection that you reference in your book.
Yeah.
And Texas A&M has George R.R. Martin's, drafts and letters. So you need to make sure that is forever memorialized somewhere. You need to scan it just in case anything physically happens to it.
I have finally started the arduous process of scanning it. And I'm going to start releasing things from it. I would assume within the month. I'm starting with the Arneson letters, because
they're funny.
In I think it was April of 1997, he writes Peter Adkison and he's like, "Hey, can I be in charge of TSR and Dungeons and Dragons, please?" And he misspells Peter Adkison's name. It's
a classic Arneson.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking and earnest, and an amazing piece of D&D history to think of. What would have happened if Peter Adkison had been like, "Yeah, Dave Arneson, now's your time. Take your shot, kid."
Yep.
But it was not to be.
And if I understand correctly, I saw on your Facebook recently at a recent con, Adkison interviewed you.
Yeah, it was really weird. I had a good time, but it was on his I think it was on Twitch or Discord. It was on Gen Con TV, and he had me on. He got to interview me. It was again, I think it was
surreal.
It was great, but it was weird. And I was happy that the climax of one of the things he's told me over the years is he's learned things from my work. And the ending of the book, he kind of didn't know. And I was very pleased by that I managed to find
awesome.
Something that he didn't know at the end. I can tell you about it if you want me to.
No. Full disclosure, I'm on chapter 26. No, I'm
You're almost done,
alert. Yeah. I've been feverishly reading through it.
Yeah,
no, you should give the audience
Kindle
edition.
So I've actually read the whole thing now.
Oh, wow, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. It's got some interesting tidbits in it, which is really fantastic. Yep. When did you say I got to put this in a book?
It was when I discovered that TSR had a contract with Random House that allowed TSR to receive payment for things they shipped to Random House when Random House received them instead of when Random House sold them. I was like, that's a really weird arrangement.
Huh.
And apparently TSR, when they were doing like their financial statements, they would ship product to Random House, receive payment for it, which functioned like a loan, and they would add those loans to their bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is going on at this company where they borrow money and claim it to be gross income? That's crazy. Again, I just started running down that rabbit hole and found similarly crazy things had happened at TSR. It's a miracle, really, that TSR lasted from 1974 to 1997. It's a testament to the strength of Dungeons and Dragons as a brand that managed to keep the company afloat.
That's definitely the biggest takeaway from Ben's book, y'all, is how many things TSR with Gygax and post Gygax did wrong, yet survived, but then ended up limping to the finish line to get bought by the Five Ring Sky Wizards of the Coast deal, which I didn't know Ryan Dancy was a part of that. Ryan Dancy was part of Living City, if I remember correctly. He founded the company that took over the Living City Living campaign, I believe. And if any old Living Greyhawkers in the audience like Vernon, they might know more on that than I did. But how interwoven this web of people was from the 80s, and just like Jim Ward walking out, and the different versions of the stories you're telling, you know, because you had some unreliable narrators, or just time has created fuzziness to the accounts. It was really fascinating. I do encourage everyone out there in the audience, if you have any interest whatsoever in TSR history, to go and get this book.
Yeah, to me, what the business side of things in this book was the big revelation, so to speak. I've read the Playing at the World and got a lot of the background of D&D, and so that side of it was not that revealing to me in this book. This was kind of a wonderful, more narrative style of writing it, but the business side was the big revelation, meaning how the things came about, and a lot of how TSR worked, so to speak. The kind of the upper suits and the executive level were isolating themselves. There were very little the kind of communication between the artistic, the ones that actually did the stuff, and the ones that decided and managed the business side of things. That there was that difference, and also especially the Random House, that kind of agreement, how it actually worked. I've heard about the fact that they in the end they couldn't print because they were kind of screwed by the printer, and they were owed so much. But this kind of explained how they got there, so to speak, which to me was a very big revelation.
Well, in John Peterson's area of strength is 1974 to 1985, and then I kind of pick up in 1985 and go through 1997.
They complement each other. You get all the prehistory from 1600 and Brownstein and stuff up until, so that you get that wonderfully presented in Playing at the World, but you take in and give it a deeper narrative of those, how when D&D was created up until it was bought by Wizards of the Coast, so to speak.
Yeah, and John described his style once as sentence after unyielding sentence, and you know, that is not my style. I try and write very novelistically when I can. Pardon me. Again, people have told me the book is like a page turner, and I find that very satisfying.
Yeah,
absolutely, it's fun.
Yeah, it is.
I was not expecting, you know, you to call suits yahoos or wahoos or who days. I forget. There's a term in there. You mentioned a couple times, but you were very flowery, very fun, bombastic. You're clearly trying to channel some of the Gord novels from Gygax with, you know, and
he even talks about Mazes and Monsters with Tom Hanks.
Right.
Come on.
I mean, that.
and wonderful anecdote about the roofs at TSR, the inner roofs and people falling through it. That was, that's hilarious.
It made it very human. I think to a lot of people, me as a kid, TSR was just people doing Dungeons and Dragons. And I thought, like, oh, I should write to them to Dragon. I never did, but I should have. I think to this day that I invented Gemstone Dragons. I just never submitted it to anybody. And now you've made them like real people, and Jay has had a lot of these people on his show. Jay, in this book, like you've had Ward on. Who else from TSR?
Oh, Skip Williams.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Steve Winter.
Jeff Grubb. Is he in?
Steve Winter. Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff Grubb's obviously in there a lot.
Yeah.
Winter. I forgot you'd had Winter.
Almost every single one, for the most part. Roger Moore. Right, Roger Moore.
Roger Greenwood.
Yeah, Greenwood. Yeah. Roger Moore didn't want to talk to me. Actually, he's one of
the
those.
Not a surprise.
Well, we understand why
it's
now.
new.
Yeah,
exactly.
He's just coming back out of the shell.
Exactly. He's just coming back into the hobby
Gary
again,
Olin, has the same experience where he can. Roger's just not very easy to contact. Apparently,
Roger was great on the show, and that was only about 2 months ago. We had him on.
Okay,
so
maybe I have to contact him. Because Dale Donovan, who was his essentially his mentee at TSR, like Roger hired him and kind of taught him the ropes. He asked Roger for me, and Roger was just like, I don't want to go back to that time in my life.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. He was one of like
I think that's what he told Holy.
Yeah, he was only one of 3 or 4 people that didn't want to talk to me. It's like, well, fair enough if you don't want to. So.
When I had him on, we celebrated the accomplishments he had, like and that was, I mean, he said he's coming back. So for another discussion. So but all that. So the one thing I remember, and when we had Skip on, I'll never forget what he said. He was blatantly honest about it. I think it goes into the book. Every single time when he was, they sold a box set, they lost money. And just at that time. And I was just like,
especially some of the
I was
more
like thinking to
expensive
myself,
ones. So,
I was thinking to myself, why would you do them? Why would you raise a, that just, so,
it was some more than others, as I understand it.
Yeah.
But the most famous example I have someone on the record for, I would say, is Dark Sun. If you bought any of the early Dark Sun adventures, they were like these thin box sets that came with a flip book inside. And they had beautiful art and like a story for players and stuff like that. You could put it on the table and it was really nice. But they lost $1 on every adventure they sold to the flip book, and they sold 150,000 of them before they realized they were losing money. And it's hard to keep a business in business when you're doing that.
And it's a shame because Dark Sun was hugely popular. I mean, it was like a revelation after Forgotten Realms. They hit a home run. They could have.
Yeah.
And this is where I disagree with Jay. I think people were like, oh, cool, this exists. And then they didn't really buy it or play it.
Oh.
I mean, feral halflings, I think people thought were cool once. And the mules, right? Half dwarf, half human was an interesting race idea.
Yeah.
But I don't recall anyone ever playing Dark Sun until like maybe you go to a convention and there's one table of,
Dark Sun computer game was huge.
Was it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That was like it was the first in its MMO style after the original Neverwinter Nights, which was a gold box version of a game. Then the Dark Sun one came out, and this is before Neverwinter Nights, the 3rd edition, came out.
Yeah,
this is before Baldur's Gate 2 came out, which was the biggest one of all time.
Yeah, but that's some years after
getting crap in the audience for poo-pooing.
So.
John Burchell just said a pox upon you, Casey, because that's that's one of his favorite settings.
But TSR's deal with the Random House about getting prepaid for it might explain something why they still wanted to ship product, because they could still kind of put revenue in the books, even if it was fake revenue eventually. But
it's just so mind-boggling.
The numbers looked good, so I can understand why a lot of people, even internally, could be fooled by it, so to speak.
Well, one thing I like to point out about Dark Sun is there's an interesting lesson there about the importance of fiction. Which is, if you took every Dark Sun gaming product sold for the first year of Dark Sun and you put that in one pile, and you took the one Dark Sun novel that came out that year and put its sales in another pile, the one novel sold more than all of the gaming products combined. TSR really was just as much a fiction publisher as gaming publisher. And the fiction was so important to the health of the company that rumors would go around that one day everyone was going to come in and it was just going to be a publishing house. They weren't even going to make games anymore. They were just going to make fiction because it was so important to their bottom line.
So... Go ahead, Casey. No, please go. Absolutely, Casey.
One of the things I found really helpful about the book is I intuitively thought over all these years that TSR died because they spread themselves too thin, too many settings. I think you talk about the fish bait theory, right? That if a new setting would attract new players, new settings don't attract new players. They might attract one new player for every group of 5 to 6, probably would be my guess. But right, they had so many settings, and we all know that the second edition era. And so me as a layperson, I've always thought that's how TSR killed itself, is that they spread themselves too thin. And your book goes into great detail about, yes, they did spread themselves too thin.
Books.
But they were also, well, the splat books we don't really touch upon. And I think I've got some sales figures for those. So Ben, just a little background. When I was writing my book in 2010, 2011, I was a grad student at Emerson, and I had access to LexisNexis or whatever it is that tracks sales by ISBNs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as part of my graduate studies. So once or twice a year, my colleague and co-author, Britt, who helped me with my book, and he's done freelancing for Wizards of the Coast, and he was a Living Greyhawk Circle member. Anyway, we went and pulled sales data by ISBNs for 3.0, 3.5, 4th edition, and I think some early Peso stuff. And I think we may have sucked in some or 2nd edition figures as well. But anyway, my point is your book does a great job of saying, like, yes, not only did they do too many settings, but these other factors all helped contribute to the fall, which I'd had it just too simple in my head.
Well, and I'm really interested to hear about that method of getting sales numbers, because I assume I'm going to write a sequel. Cool. And I assume the sequel structure is going to be, what happens if you give away your intellectual property? And because the OGL is essentially giving away most of D&D and saying anybody can make D&D. Let's see what happens. And it is a fascinating experiment. But I feel like I can't write a sequel without sales numbers. And that was the thing I was thinking about was, there are book tracking services, and usually they'll only catch things at bookstores, not at game stores. So it's not perfect, but it's still sales numbers. I mean, tons of people go and buy game books at Barnes & Noble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll send you what I got, and I'll have to dig into my memory banks. I think it was called LexisNexis, but that may be some sort of archive.
No rush. I'm so consumed by marketing right now.
Of course.
But I'll keep that in mind. And I'm just glad to hear that you got something from that was fruitful. So that's really good news for me.
Oh, it's massive. Yeah. Name a book, just for an example here, and then we'll move on. Player's Handbook 3.0. When we check the numbers, again, 2010, 2011, 2012, at 162,849 sold.
Really?
Player's Handbook 3. Oh, sorry.
And was that over the life of the? So that was like
that was
the publication.
That has been up to that point in time.
Okay,
according to this.
Continue. Sorry.
Player's Handbook 3.5, 201,403. Player's Handbook 5E. Player's Handbook 3E Leather. 3,670, the special editions with the leather. The Monster Manual in leather had only sold 963. We got very granular. I've got Frostburn, 9,471.
Oh, wow.
Frostburn was a major undertaking for 3rd edition or 3.5 to do cold climate stuff. And at the time we checked it, it had sold less than 10,000 copies. So sequel can be 3.0 failures in sales. Dungeonscape 8,000, Cityscape 8,000. I mean, I'll send you this thing, and I'll try and figure out the date we actually pulled the data from. I might have to get with Britt on that, but it'll be a sales nerd like you. I think will really be able to do something.
I'm very interested. And again, for my purposes, just knowing that's a thing that you were able to do and get some data from is super useful. Because, even if you assume that, that only 50% of sales went through that purchasing system, it's still real numbers. It's still real numbers. And also it means that, let me look at my data. Does that mean that 3.5 wasn't as successful as 1st edition?
Well, keep in mind, when did 3.5 happen? That happened in the middle of Living Greyhawk, probably
2003, 4, something like that.
2003 or 4. Yeah. This data was pulled 2010, 2011. Fourth edition came out 2008.
Yep, 2008.
So, right, this according to this math,
then you should have at least caught all the third edition sales. Should have been caught by 2008.
Right. Forgotten Realms campaign setting 61,000. So this does go back into some earlier stuff.
That means that third edition was not as successful as first edition, even if we were to double your numbers.
Well, we'll want to make sure that the data from LexisNexis, it could be bookstores only.
Still, I mean, it's just any kind of numbers are useful, and if it means that third edition wasn't as successful as first, it means that basic D&D would up until fifth probably still have been the most successful version of Dungeons and Dragons.
I think we can guess that third edition wasn't massively successful because they rushed into fourth edition. Which I'm just going to start an edition wars here.
Well,
but
you got to remember the Paizo Hawk thing, and it wasn't really being run by WotC at the time anyway. It was being run by Paizo, so they wanted to get it back in their hands anyway. So that was another thing you got to take into consideration.
But and one of the other interesting things that I got from this book was how they actively suppressed D&D in favor of D&D to get Arneson out of the picture, so to speak. How that was kind of done. I knew that was part of it, but I didn't realize the extent of it until I read the book, and it was kind of put in. You could see how it was put into system and when I look at the latest version of the AD&D logo that kind of made advanced tiny, that was something that I went to my bookshelf and I damn, I never thought of it. I bought those books again and didn't realize it, but that was an interesting revelation to me.
Ben, please talk about that.
Yeah, the chart that you pulled up is probably one of the most relevant ones in response to what Anna was saying. Basic D&D was outsold. It was hugely successful. It outsold first edition players' handbooks and Dungeon Master's Guide sales combined pretty much every year in the big years. It gave it such a big lead that it's more successful than first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. But likely because at first Arneson and then Arneson and Gygax received royalties for it. Mm-hmm. It never really received the support it deserved. Like you look at these numbers and I think to myself, wow. Basic D&D is what we should do.
Holmes
Advanced
Basic.
Dungeons and Dragons.
They should just use D&D and revamp it and keep sending some royalties to Arneson and Gygax. And I mean, to me, it seems like they should have, and these were the business people that had the MBAs and should know, they should look at the cold numbers, figure this out, send money somewhere and cash in on the brand, and instead out of spite and nothing else against all the hard numbers and the business practices and stuff. To me, it seems weird that despite they were being business people that apparently got paid and had titles and all that to make sound business decisions, still just did it out of spite year after year.
One of the weird things is that on the one hand, Lorraine Williams was an uptick in professionalism. Yeah. And again, people said she could talk to banks. She was good in a room with business people. But her undergraduate degree, as I recall, was in pre-communist Russian history.
So not in business.
Yeah, and she hired business people, but the business people she hired, like they used to run cardboard factories, stuff like that. It's not until Wizards of the Coast gets their hands on the D&D property that you have D&D geeks with business degrees running the business, and I think it improves. But again, Lorraine Williams, John Danovich, a VP of sales, talked to me extensively about how he begged her to go in on Dungeons and Dragons. He said, what you don't want to make it because we're going to pay Gary and Dave. Just buy them out. Like, how much money do we have to give them to buy them out? Apparently, the answer was low six figures because when
that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That was like that was a pittance at the when they were making tens of millions of dollars a year.
We know how much Ed got for Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, exactly. That was the other
$5,000.
Horrible.
Like, I hope there's some sort of residuals for
There's
Ed.
not.
That's I mean, he's been the most goodwill ambassador. For them in that setting. Like I've never been on a show with him. Ben has had him on a bunch.
I
He's developing a relationship.
Just kidding.
I think that's a good idea. That's the smart play. And I'm okay to admit that. But
Ed's awesome.
But the fact that he sold that and no one ever came back to him and said, you know what, we kind of screwed you. We're going to start giving you a royalty and stuff. It's just mind-boggling. But then he wrote some books, right? Paladin in Hell.
Royalties
hopefully he got some good royalties from the books.
Ed works to this day. I mean, he did the Thay book, and he did the Thay book separate from WotC. He just said, "I'm doing it." Just recently, and he, you know, him and I think it was Alex Camber.
Alex Camber,
yeah, and he got, you know, it was hugely successful. Ed's a smart man, very smart.
Anna likes to say, "No one in role playing gets rich." But I think that's bullshit. I think the suits were getting rich.
Yeah, and then we have Stefan Pokorny, who's done a damn good. He's so damn
well,
smart.
sure.
Yeah, but also one awesome passage in your book I think was so cool when you said that it was really hard for let's see, I forgot exactly what in what, but it was like so hard for TSR to go and negotiate a contract, because the people that negotiated were people that were formerly military intelligence. And to me that was so funny, because that was my previous work too. So
military intelligence.
Like, a lot of people seem to work in that line of work. So
Anna's got Swedish secrets coming out of her ears.
Yeah, so it was when I read that, was kind of funny. I was like, yeah, there's a lot of us apparently. That's funny. Yep.
All right, so specific question here. We and the audience asked this: is the Fallout with the UK TSR in here?
No.
Okay. Do you know anything about anything in particular about that? Okay.
The razor of my book was, you know, why did TSR fail? And I do a good 50 pages on like, if you know, 1974 to 1985. But the real center of the book is, why did TSR fail? And one piece of feedback I have received from people is, hey, this is not a complete history of like D&D through 1997. And I'm like, you're correct, it is not. It is like one person was like, hey, weren't there artisan lawsuits against TSR in the 1990s? And I'm like, if there were, it did not matter to the fall of TSR. But and again, the UK stuff, you know, so again, it just didn't come up in my research, so I left it where it was. Sorry, go ahead, Anna.
No, I was, but you have one chapter that was also new to me that I didn't know. I've heard about TSR West, but I've only heard that there was something called TSR West, but you have a whole chapter about it. And I think that was really cool. Yeah, really, really cool, because it gave, and there's two sides to the TSR West. You had first the Gary's excursions into Hollywood and stuff. That was one separate thing. And then afterwards, during Lorraine's reign at TSR, then they started TSR West, and all the debacle getting in with the comics and all that was a lot of interesting read that I think and especially since I'm not a comic nerd at all, I didn't know hardly anything about that, but it was completely new to me. So
yeah, I'm really glad to hear that, because when I started researching that, I was like, okay, does this even matter? I don't know. And then I start doing research, and first of all, everyone involved in TSR's attempt to break into comic books was really forthcoming with their tales. Secondly, they are all really characters. Like, they are all really interesting people to interview. I think I spent 6 weeks to 2 months writing that chapter and interviewing people. And it was a lot of fun. That might have been the most fun I had working on the book. And it is delightful to me that it's the first time that story has really come to light in its entirety in the book. And for audience members, very briefly, TSR had licensed Dungeons and Dragons properties to DC Comics.
Yeah.
DC Comics was doing a really good job with those books. They were selling like 100,000 copies a month. That's like Wonder Woman was selling at the time. And TSR looks at this and they're like, hey, there's money here. We should make our own comics, but we can't take stuff from DC because we've already given them our best properties. Let's take Buck Rogers and make some stuff up. And we're going to do it in LA because that's where my brother is, even though it's going to be more expensive. And there's no comic book people in LA. And then DC Comics finds out they're going into competition with them and ends all their stuff. And there's, they poach people from DC. There's massive shenanigans. It is. I really enjoyed writing it, and I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed reading that chapter.
It's like a mashup of all the bad stuff you can do in business in one go, so to speak.
It really is.
Yeah, it's like every and I don't have an MBA, but if I had one, I'm pretty sure that will be all the bad examples of what not to do. You will get in an entire MBA education in one mashup, and involving for TSR a significant amount of money. So I think monetarily was probably a big, and also a lot of good faith with your partners and stuff like that. So it was, I think it was hilarious, fun, interesting, and tragic at the same time to read about.
That's great to hear.
I'd forgotten I have like Dragonlance #1 squirred away here somewhere until I read that chapter about the comics, and I was like, oh, right, he did that.
Yep. And again, it kind of shown that it was not rational business design. It was spite and gut feeling and revenge and stuff like that.
Speaking of LA, sorry, Anna. Speaking of LA, did you get to talk to Flint, right?
Oh, yeah. I talked
Lorraine's
to
brother.
Oh, yeah. I talked to Lorraine's brother.
But Lorraine would not speak with you. I love you. Every time in your book, it's like a disclaimer. She would not talk to me. She would not talk to me.
I've actually been to the house that Gary lived in Hollywood because because there was one guy I've been involved in slightly or on my way to be involved in 2 video documentaries about D&D, and both of them have run out and become nothing, so to speak. But and the first one I was around for 2 days helping them out, and I used my maps a little bit, and I helped with when we had anyway, and then the second one, he was going to do some stuff in Hollywood, so he pointed out the address and told me that was the house that Gary lived in. So I actually drove out there just to take a look at it and stuff, and today you can't see much because it's just white walls out, so to speak, but it was interesting because it's one of these mansions up on a hill, so to speak. And it must have been a significant amount of money involved in just having access to that house for
I mean, cocaine ain't cheap, Anna.
No, I'm not saying anything about drugs. I'm just saying that
it's in the book.
But I'm not going to. That's not my deal to comment on that. That's for Ben too, because I have no information about that. I just thought it was kind of cool to have seen the building where it actually happened, so to speak. So yeah.
Was it really, really high up?
Yeah, it's a fair. You can tell that it's a good spot, so to speak, with good views and stuff like that up in Upper Hollywood. So,
in my mind, it looks like Tony Stark's house that got blown up in Iron Man.
It's not an enormous property by any means, but I would say it's a mid-sized good mansion up in the hills of Hollywood. So yeah,
it was the height.
It will cost millions today. So yeah, definitely.
It was the height that was described that really struck me, because I want to say I got from both Flint Dilley and Ernie Gygax that it was so high up and situated such that you could both see the ocean and the valley from the property.
Wow.
And I'm like, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, it sounds expensive. I don't know what that means. It sounds expensive.
Oh yeah, it's expensive. Meaning houses go there for $10 million or more.
I think you said the rent was $10,000 a month in the 80s.
Oh yeah, it's probably 100,000. Those houses go in the many millions, many tens of millions sometimes too, I guess. Yeah.
So as far as talking to Lorraine Williams goes, her brother allowed me to contact her, and she said that after watching part of one of my seminars at Gen Con, which I posted to YouTube, that she thought that we would have nothing fruitful to discuss. But I am of the opinion that there's a 50% chance that I will hear from her in the next 6 weeks, because I think that she can ignore almost all the media about the book. I think she can ignore the book itself, but the Washington Post is going to run a piece on the book in August.
Nice.
And the Washington Post is going to include this image.
She's got bat wings on.
Dragon wings.
Dragon wings.
And I showed that to her brother, and he was like, "Wow, she looks regal and beautiful in that picture." And I think that is going to prompt people to come talk to her. Like, you can't have a lovely piece of art of you appear in one of the nation's newspapers of record and shrug it off or pretend it's not happening. Like, people are going to come to her and be like, hey, did you see your image in the Washington Post?
Yeah.
What's up, Lorraine? Why didn't you talk to this guy? He seems nice. You should have talked to this guy. And I think that she'll either contact me being like, all right, let's talk, or I'm going to sue you.
Anna, I just had a deja vu.
Okay.
We met Ben at GaryCon. We were waiting for the seminar room, and Ben was in there, and you, me, and Alyssa went into the room early. Right?
Yes.
You were doing a thing about the 3rd edition.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I remember Anna now.
Yeah.
I remember your Swedish
Yeah,
accent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So and
Small
that's,
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the wonders. You hint at a follow-up.
Yeah.
Covering
yeah.
the 3rd edition, and just hearing that seminar and reading this, and I was like, yes, that is so cool. So yep.
All right.
To people who might not know what you're talking about, so I do this seminar on 3rd edition because what I discovered about the creation of 3rd edition was amazing and Machiavellian and political and dark and backstabby, filled with betrayals, lies, manipulations.
Tell me Skip Williams is
It's
the villain.
D&D history. So.
Please tell me Skip Williams is a villain.
Villain is a strong word, but I love Skip Williams, and he's been very forthright and truthful with me. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that.
but going back to Lorraine a little bit, I think it's really it's wonderful that you covered extensively covered her period, because we always talk about Gary Gygax, and it's Gary Gygax Day today, so we should definitely honor him and his role in creating D&D. But Lorraine Williams was kind of the caretaker of D&D for well over a decade, and under a very kind of important role in the history of D&D. And I think your book is really cool that you really go deep into that part too, and emphasize that a lot, and her business decision and what happens with it and stuff. That, to me, that's very, very interesting as a passionate D&D player for years to know that.
Yeah, well, she oversaw the game's silver age, and that needs to have some attention paid to it, I would say.
Yeah,
that's fair. Do we know what she has done since the sale? Without, like, I haven't wikied her or anything.
Yeah.
As far as I know, as far as I know, she's been wealthy and funding some charities.
Okay, well, that's good for her. Yeah. Good. Yep.
So, getting into the meat here, give me 1 or 2 instances in the book that, like, were the death knells, and I'm assuming one of them is going to be the VHS. But yeah. So Ben, your opinion.
So the death knells of TSR.
Yeah,
I would say the 2 most interesting things to me were the Christmas acts of 1996 when they fight. Yeah, well, he quit a few months before that because he refused to. So, Jim Ward quit in the fall of 1996. Jim Ward was the highest ranking creative at TSR in 1996. He quit TSR after 2 decades at the company because he was told, come up with lists of people to fire. And he's like, I'm not doing that. And he quits. Yeah. And I heard that story and I'm like, that sounds like garbage. Like, that sounds so self-serving and so crazy. Like, who quits TSR because you have to fire people? TSR's fired people for decades. And yet every person I interviewed, I'm like, so did that happen? And they're like, yes. And it was so amazing. So even though I went into that deeply skeptical and looking for another story about it, like he got fired or whatever, but that was not what I was told. I was told, nope, that is God's honest truth.
Well confirmed, so to say.
He's talked about it on the shows too. He goes into he's blatant.
But it's good. Then we know it's
blunt.
true.
He's very blunt.
So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, Vancouver.
So his assistant then, David Wise, ends up having to make those lists. And the Friday before Christmas, 1996, they fire about 24 people from TSR. And everyone who's fired has to apparently walk past management cubicles that are being refurbished as they're leaving. It's like, they found money to redo their offices, but they're letting me go. And that was certainly a moment when everyone was like, oh crap, there are problems. Then in the winter of 96, 97, TSR's printer refused to print any more of their product because TSR owed them money. So what happened was staff would go in, continue working on D&D products. Products would be completed. They would be put in Ziploc baggies, and the baggies would be put into a vice president's office awaiting printing. And day after day, week after week, month after month, the number of Ziploc bags increased, and yet nothing was printed. And people eventually were like, what am I doing here? You know, what am I doing making this adventure that's just going to be put in this Ziploc baggie, and who knows what's going to happen to it?
I was going to say, how much do we know of or how much of that has been recovered, published, or found, or how much have been lost?
Most of it still found print, because Wizards of the Coast, when they took over, they wanted to establish credibility with both the audience and with the staff. So like Jakandor comes immediately to mind, which was, it was a setting with barbarians and mages fighting each other, I want to say.
Yeah.
I'd have to go to drive through and look it up, but I want to say it was a 2 or 3 book, like little mini campaign setting, and that was all there was to it. And that saw print. So I think most of it saw print.
Yeah.
It's not like there are lost works out there, as far as I know. At least no one told me, like, hey, I wrote this amazing novel and it didn't come out. Usually it was just, it came out a couple of years late.
It's usually the artwork that is lost. All the artwork, because
the stuff in the storage unit, like that was a little snippet that just made me cry. Jay,
Monty Cook and who
Harold Johnson.
Yeah, they went up and went to that storage unit. Yeah, that's
before
sad.
It all got trashed. Jay's shtick, Ben, is that he has an elaborate gaming table set up in his basement, which is like the nerd mecca. You got to see this place. And he's got a table like people talk about Gygax, right? It's sawhorses and a big old wooden. That's 8x8, and he does 3D terrain on it. And him and his buddies make the terrain, 3D print the terrain.
Wow,
paint. It's bonkers. And then he does remote games with people on it or people there.
Like
and stuff. Yeah.
And so this stuff you described in the storage closet was all the Gen Con stand table, 3D terrain, miniature stuff. And you just have to think, like, these two guys, maybe they should have offered the storage unit people, here's $100. Let us come back tomorrow with a moving truck.
Rented an 18-wheeler or something.
Or something where you just give someone some money and say, we'll be back tomorrow. How much does Wizards of the Coast owe you for 1 month? It's just they weren't able to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you weren't in survival mode and like, Monty Cook was told by Harold Johnson, you're doing something with me this afternoon, clear the decks, and you're coming with me. You know, like if maybe there had been time to reflect and everyone wasn't in survival mode, you'd think to yourself, you know what, I'll pay the rent for 1 month.
And then
I'll get it. I'll figure something out. Something to do with all this.
Storage Wars D&D style.
Just emptied it or whatever.
And that would have been the thing to do. But again, it's so hard to. Also, like, as recent as like 2007, 2008. I was like, oh, the tabletop role-playing game industry is dead. I'm just going to buy all the games I like, put them in my basement, and now I have my games, and I can play them till I die. But I certainly never anticipated the titanic growth we've seen in the past 14 years. And, when you're thinking, well, TSR is dying, D&D is dying, this is all just junk. It's from the perspective of today, we're like, oh my God.
I have never thrown a piece of paper out, even with notes on it.
Yeah, I've lost 1 book because I lent it out to someone and I never got it back. So now I never give books to anyone ever under any circumstances. Yeah.
So you guys are going to make me cry. I lost half my modules in the great soap debacle of 2007. I was moving from Houston to College Station on a warm summer day. I had my D&D modules in a box. And as I was moving, I foolishly threw in a bar of soap that was wrapped in the hot Texas sun, melted the soap, and it destroyed half of the old school Beckme and AD&D Adventures that I owned. Like I couldn't even salvage them. There was no way of dealing with the soap damage, and
that's heartbreaking.
For things I had bought at Toys R Us used to sell D&D stuff, and on the 10th anniversary, they had a massive sale with prices slashed, and so I bought like everything that they had super cheap, and I lost it all in 2007 or half of it.
We all look back and rue the day. I could have bought 3 sealed 25th anniversary box sets 50% off. I would have got for $12.50 each when I was a kid in the 90s. I mean, we all rue that. So Curtis had a question specifically. Is there a sense that Lorraine Williams ultimately sold TSR at a loss to WotC, or did she make money on the deal in the end?
She did not make money.
Okay.
Peter Adkison specifically told me that the shareholders of TSR did not get much. And now, because TSR produced Buck Rogers material, and because of her salary, which was, I will tell you, was substantial since I saw her salary in Peter Adkison's papers, owning TSR may have been a net positive for her over the course of 12 years, but it certainly was not any huge windfall. I want to say John Peterson did the math, and she took control of TSR for like $500,000. And over 12 years, her salary was considerably more than $1 million in sum. But certainly for someone who was already rich, making $500,000 isn't a ton of money. Even if she made a couple million off of the Buck Rogers licensing, it's still not a ton of money. And really, at that point, you're just bleeding the company. And, I don't know that. I assume that she did not pay herself huge fees for the use of Buck Rogers, because that could have killed the company. And no one said that was what was going on.
I remember that Buck Rogers SSI computer game, too, and it was not good. It was okay. It was.
Right.
Yeah, now I understand. After reading your book, now I understand why there were Buck Rogers and comic stuff in Dragon
everywhere
and stuff like that.
It makes sense.
And I was
I'd never known that either.
Also, the Ares science fiction gaming section in Dragon.
Exactly, Dragon. I was like, what is this crap? I didn't want it.
Jim Ward was
Dragon.
long gone.
Now 30 years afterwards, I get or 25 something, 30 years afterwards, I get the explanation why those sections were there.
Vernon, you don't. I have recollection because I was a manager at EB at the time, so I remember those games, which were good and which were bad. So
I never heard of them because they never made it to Sweden. So yeah.
Between John's book and yours, to me, it's really mind-boggling that both Gygax and Williams did not just be super rich. Like in my brain, both of them should have been super rich. And obviously Gary was living a high lifestyle, which had its own expenses, and he's got however many children he has, and he had to deal with those expenses. His first divorce, who knows? I'm sure that's a topic of other articles and books. But in my brain is, you're running this, you should be rich. Having your book right after, I told Ben, like I hadn't even finished this one yet when I learned of his book's existence. I've been like feverishly chugging through Game Wizard so I could start his. Like, it's a really good way of getting the history. By the way, I do recommend it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable that John and we didn't plan this. We were working in parallel but not in tandem. Like, I didn't know Game Wizards was coming out until about a month before it did. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is amazing. There'll be people who read Game Wizards and then pick up my book in the summer, and they get this like complete history of TSR from 1974 to 1997. It's like when there was a good patch of Marvel movies where it's like Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, and then the 2 Infinity movies, and it's a few months after another, and you have this really amazing experience of being able to check in on the story without waiting years in between. It was. I'm glad that you're reading it kind of in that order, and I hope you really enjoy that experience, because I've heard from people that it's been nice, and I'm glad that it is.
Yeah, way to go.
Can we delve into some setting discussion here?
Yes.
Would that be okay? Yes.
Good segue.
To go to this. So I love the way you've done this. This is fantastic. And I'm assuming these are box sets setting hardcore books, no adventures, no modules.
Correct.
In here.
The chart that you were looking at there is just like, okay, so it's your Forgotten Realms box set, your Dark Sun box set, and hang on, did I include? So I would have included, for example, in the Forgotten Realms number, it would have been
the North, all those add-on books, all those add-on box sets.
So for Forgotten Realms, it would have been the original 87 box set, which was first edition, the second edition box set, and Forgotten Realms Adventures, which originally updated it for second edition. So anything that you could call a core release is in there. So like Ravenloft, I want to say there were 2 core releases. The names are escaping me. Greyhawk is the only weird one.
5, right?
Like, I want to say there was a Greyhawk map folio that I didn't have numbers for, and
80 folio, 83 box set folio, Free City Greyhawk box set, Jim Ward's hardcover book, and From the Ashes is my guess.
Oh, okay.
And here, let me. I can tell you right now.
That's my guess. There's 5.
That's my guess too.
So, Ben, you just hit Jay's specific nerdery right there.
Yeah, apparently. So I can tell you exactly what makes up that number because I happen to have the numbers in front of me. So I got the Greyhawk rulebook, which came out in '79 in there. I have the World of Greyhawk Revised, which is from '84, Greyhawk Adventures from '88.
Yep.
And then
Free City Greyhawk box set.
And then the From the Ashes box set in '92, I believe.
Okay, so no Free City.
So no Free City.
Wow. No Free City. Okay.
Throw those numbers up.
Wow. Okay. Yep. About another probably 100,000. Wow. That's fantastic. So we know that. Well, what do you wean from these numbers, Ben? You did all the research.
Yeah.
Let me ask it that way.
Yeah. So what I take from it is that you had D&D kind of growing in the 80s, and then after 84, 85, 86, around there, it peaked and really kind of cratered afterwards. And you never saw anything putting up numbers like what they were doing in the early 80s and mid 80s again. And it really is a long, slow decline for TSR. And again, part of it probably was having 5,000 settings. Another part of it that I didn't discuss in the book that I'm thinking about more and more now that I'm outside of it is, growing up in the 90s in high school, I started with D&D, but then pretty rapidly I was like, this is kind of a creaky system. Especially second edition. If you compared second edition to some of the other things going on in game design at the time, it was slow, creaky. There were a lot of rules. Other systems where it was just skill plus stat, roll against a difficulty number. Do you succeed? Seemed both more simple and more realistic, for lack of a better word. So I do think, and in the 80s, again, I think some of you were there longer than I was, but you had Traveler, RuneQuest, Call of Cthulhu, but were there any other really big games in the 80s challenging TSR?
People played Paranoia, right?
Yeah.
People played
Paranoia
Rifts,
was big.
Skirps.
Yeah,
but
it's so Vampire comes out, but that's not the late 80s.
That's not till 90, 91.
No. Is that 90, 91?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
after
relatively
after
young.
Ravenloft, believe it or not.
Yeah. I think one of the ways you can see, go back in Dragon and see what other games are being advertised in at the time. That way you get a good kind of overview of other games.
So if the number of gamers is not increasing rapidly, but the number of good games is increasing, and you have that eating away at TSR's numbers too, that may explain, again, like every chart I throw up that's a TSR product, it's like it did probably okay in the 80s to good in the 80s, and then it dies. Down.
You also have one other thing that you talk about at the end in the book, that tabletop role-playing games might not be that good of a business idea, because you can sell a couple of core products and then people can keep using them for years without having to buy anything else, so to speak. And I think that is also, once you mature in your gaming, you don't need to buy that much product at all. You just keep making your own stuff, so to speak.
In 20 years, we can ask Mona and Bowman about Pathfinder 1E and the transition to 2E, which they swear isn't related to sales, right? I think they've publicly said that. But I think they also publicly said when they created Pathfinder that they were never going to do a second edition, right? They were trying to touch on the fact that TSR, Wizards of the Coast, had gone 3.0, 3.5, 4.0 in pretty short order in the grand scheme of things. That's a conversation for 20 years from now.
Yeah, and I mean, go ahead, sorry.
Rexella's Cat Lord says it's WotC's setting today only releases one main book per setting. Is that enough to avoid splitting the market? So everything's neutrally based there too. I mean, they really put it. See, here's what you can do in Candlekeep. You place it here, here, and here.
And they're adventures. They're not setting books.
Yeah, they're
for
not
the
setting
most part.
books. You're absolutely correct.
I mean, they did Sword Coast Adventures Guide, right? In 5e. Ben, do you do a lot of 5e stuff? Do you do any? What are you playing?
D&D has never been my main jam. Like
you wrote a book about.
You write the book
that's
about.
amazing.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm certainly a tabletop role player.
Yeah.
What do you play?
So man, I started with AD&D second edition in 7th and 8th grade. I had like 2 years of that where I was like, but I couldn't find anyone to play with me. So it was me making, if you're familiar with the Complete Book of Elves, I kept making Blade Singers again and again and again and again and again.
Is that why they get mentioned, I think, in your book?
I love Blade Singers.
Yeah,
I'm sure I had one, yeah.
The NPC, Herr Dalis in Baldur's Gate 2 is a Blade Singer.
Yeah, Blade Singers are awesome.
Yeah, I remember that.
I still have my complete elf over on my shelf.
Yeah, it was as if I could only make the perfect Blade Singer, I would in fact make the perfect me. But then when I got to high school, I was like, wow, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire. I really fell hard for those. Legend of the Five Rings, I think might be the greatest role-playing game ever made.
Oh,
cool. Like, wow, what else? Delta Green, a lot of Delta Green. So kind of a dark horror was my thing and kind of still is. And I have definitely rediscovered D&D. I did play like 3rd edition for about a year. I played Pathfinder for about a year, but I'm 43 years old, and I'm going to say like D&D may have been 10 to 15% of my gaming life, but I'm from Wisconsin and I'm certainly familiar with it as a product. And very interested in it as a kind of totem of our hobby, because D&D is like Xerox and Kleenex. It is the brand that defines the field. And also, I never had any Beckme experience until like the past 2 or 3 years. And like, holy crap, this is a way better game.
Holmes Basic, man. I
can't
grew up on Holmes
mine.
Basic.
It's killing me. They didn't die in the soap debacle. They're somewhere in a duffel bag in a storage unit or an attic. I had the whole Beckme. I remember playing the Immortal Adventure where you go to Chicago to like. Yeah, you're an immortal in Chicago in 1984 or something stupid like that. It was hilarious.
Go ahead, sorry.
Now, I like how, going to this, I like how there was a bounce back, a slight one in 91. Is that Beckme there, or is that this one here?
So the chart that you're looking at now,
that's not Mulvey.
That release in 91, I think, was the black box with the gorgeous red dragon on the cover.
Okay.
And also that chart doesn't have 2nd edition on it, which is why it looks like, Basic is just destroying AD&D at that point. But tomorrow I'm going to start releasing numbers because I've only done anything that could be considered basic rules. Are the only numbers I've released for Dungeons and Dragons. Tomorrow I'm going to start doing Expert, Companion, Master, Immortal, and the Rules Cyclopedia.
Good.
I'll probably do all Expert tomorrow, and then the next day Companion, Master, Mortal, and the next day Rules Cyclopedia.
The black box was a Menser re-release, correct?
Let me, I'm looking at.
I'm almost positive that's what it was.
I don't know about Menser.
Well, it goes. Menser's the third. It goes. Holmes, Moldvay, then Menser. If I thought in that order for basics.
See, 91. I'm looking at things right now. I don't recall whose product it was, but it came out in 91, and the answer will be on the internet somewhere.
Hey, BB, are you sure it was a Moldvay? Okay. Beckme runs like Beckme and BX, which preceded, are very close. They are very close. There's very, very little differences for it. But I just saw that, and I was like, oh, there's a spike there. And they all had their box sets at that time. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's what I had. I had the full 5 colored box sets. I remember the companion rules, like, oh my god, we can do castles and stuff.
Well, John's stream name Blue Box RPG comes from the second box, right?
Yep.
And out of that, you get red, blue.
Set.
Red then blue. Yeah.
Yep. That's the blue box.
Master was the 3rd one, I guess, right? And then Companion was the 4th one, and Immortal the 5th one.
It's very interesting. Very, very interesting. So I look at these numbers, Ben, and I say to myself, Wow, I'm lucky I have 2 of the Red Steel box sets here. They only sold 16,000 of them. But I just got them. I mean, 10 years ago, you could get a Red Steel box set for $20 on eBay. Now it's any box set's $150 minimum. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how stuff has gone up. But so like, was this an inner fight where everyone wanted their little fiefdoms in TSR at the time, and they're like, I want to release my. We know certain people had, like Al Qadim was Grub, right?
Yeah.
And we all, they wanted their releases. So, what are your thoughts?
So a lot of this was TSR believed that releasing new settings was a way to grow their base and just make money. They were wrong. And one of the problems was they weren't releasing sales numbers to creatives. I think if TSR was thick with geniuses, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a bunch of people with staggering IQs. If the creatives saw these sales numbers, they would have had questions.
Right.
Okay. And said, maybe we're doing something wrong here. But they were hidden from them. And number 2, I think that the TSR method of product creation generally produced high quality product in service of a flawed strategy. Like typically you would have, and again, this varied from time to time at TSR, but typically they would have a planning meeting, and they'd be like, okay, what are we going to produce next year? And people would pitch ideas, and the ideas would be given a thumbs up or thumbs down, and people would be put in charge of them. Sometimes you wouldn't even get the idea that you pitched. Sometimes you would get, Manual of the Plains, as I recall, was pitched by someone, not Jeff Grubb, and then Jeff Grubb ended up writing it.
Yeah, true.
Ta-da! It's on my reading list today. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a good book, but you can't do adventures out of it, like Ben says in the book.
It's true. But then they typically put one creative in charge who did most of the writing, and you might have a little bit of help, and then there was editing, but generally you had one creative voice moving the product forward, which is why I in my opinion, we're still talking about Spelljammer and Planescape and Darksun and Ravenloft decades later, is because you can go pick up those products and still be blown away. The Forgotten Realms, again, not to cause trouble in a Greyhawk.
No.
Sorry, he has Greenwood on all the time.
Trust me, Ed's a good friend now, so you're not gonna have any issue.
I mean, the first edition Forgotten Realms box set has aged like a fine wine. You pick that thing up, it still makes you want to run Forgotten Realms. It's fantastic.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
is that the gray one with the?
No, it's like blue. It's like teal,
with that
almost.
It's like
what's the cover art?
The woman on there with the riding next to each other, the horses next to each other. Yeah.
There's an axe drawn back to hit her in the neck.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's 85.
Was that the first one?
That's the first one. I have it. Yeah.
I was thinking of the silver one with the 2 booklets.
Yeah.
But and I think that in general, I think that the Williams era produced more coherent work than 5th edition. I like 5th edition. I think it's a really good D&D system. I think that the adventures are wildly uneven, and a lot of the other setting books are also wildly uneven. You can tell they're ferrying it out to a lot of freelancers, and when the freelancers are good, it's good. When it's not, it's not. But you don't have that creative vision like you had with TSR products. So one of the depressing things I find about this graph is Moby Dick didn't sell a lot of copies. You have these stunning settings that are fantastic, and I think Planescape is maybe the second best D&D product ever made. I would say the original OD&D box set is number 1, and then number 2 I might make the first Planescape box set. And yet it sold 40,000 copies its first year. It did not blow the doors off. And it sold, if it sold 40,000 its first year, it only sold another 26,000 after that. That's nothing. Greyhawk puts it to shame in sales.
everyone in the audience is shocked that the Oriental Adventures hardback book sold that many copies.
I know, it's crazy.
There was also Unearthed Arcana and Oriental Adventure. We was starved for AD.
That's true.
D&D
When Unearthed
content,
Arcana came out, it was big.
Yeah, there was like years nothing came out, and then these books come out, and everybody bought whatever came out that TSR produced because there were like years.
Everyone
like
played Kensai at that time.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's first edition, right? We've had the Player's Handbook since 79,
I think.
79, 80.
Yeah, right. And then, hey, here's a book that has a barbarians and pole arms and a thief acrobat and new spells. We need new spells after a couple of years. The Unearthed Arcana to me is the height of first edition. And I know there's grognards out there that are like, I don't even use the Unearthed Arcana. Well, whatever. Screw you.
Than the grognards.
I use the Unearthed Arcana, but there's a lot I don't like about it. So,
but
it falls apart.
Yeah, but I can understand why
the binding was terrible.
It was bad. But I can understand from that psychological perspective. Everybody was waiting for products, and here they come. Right. I was never not interested in Oriental Adventures. I bought it anyway.
But then Oriental Adventures let you do ninjas and samurai and katanas. Had the starting system where you rolled a D100 and it determined like what kind of family and wealth.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of concepts and ideas.
Yeah, it was a pretty innovative book. Whether or not we're willing to look at it now as did it mess up? Should white people have been writing about pseudo-Asian fantasy stuff?
It hasn't aged that well from that perspective. From a game mechanics perspective, it was a lot of interesting stuff for D&D.
Like I said, Legend of the Five Rings might be my favorite game. So believe me, I've thought about that a lot.
Yep.
So I have 7 of them, Patrick. I don't need a reprint of Unearthed Arcana. I have 7 books. I don't need them. So
just for Patrick, there you go.
Yeah. So question about Lankhmar. Here's my theory on it. Why it didn't sell so well. I think it didn't fit it was different, and people are like, this is a whole different setting, and it just, I don't care. I think that's where what happened with that, even though it's such a great setting. It was outside of the Greyhawk. It's only Greyhawk at this time. It's pre-Dragonlance even, right? So I just think it just didn't fit. People were like, what do you think, Brett?
Well, how many of us knew? Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I mean, you go ahead and go first, because again, I'm going to go. I don't know. Lankhmar is not a.
Okay.
I've read one Lankhmar novel, and I was like, it's fine, but beyond that, I know nothing except that Lankhmar sold 73,800 copies apparently. Okay. So go ahead.
What year does that say it came out in?
85.
So I'm a 12-year-old. I'm a book nerd. I'm digesting everything out there that's fantasy, sci-fi, Greg Bear. All the classics. Raymond D. Feist Magician series is still the best series to this day, folks. But and I didn't even know much about like Lankhmar and what is it, a Fard and the Grey Mouser or Fard or whatever. These were a known property, but that set, I think if you ignore the fact that it's not on Greyhawk, it details a city, right, that could be ported into other campaign settings. But it's just name recognition.
Yeah, I also must say that. Oh, sorry, I dropped you.
No.
Oh, I was saying that Lankhmar had production values that were unusually high for that times. Meaning the cover art is gorgeous, and also it was one that had the best cartography. I know that is my forte, but I also think that a lot of gamers in general are interested in cartography, and Lankhmar had better cartography than almost any other product. They made a city map where they had little inserts where you can do things. So there was a lot of cool production values into the Lankhmar product that came in later editions, but it was the first product that had enhanced. It was like the first of a new generation of stuff that came later, so to speak. So I think Lankhmar really stood out in the aisles, so to speak, of for D&D players back then, or AD&D players. Yeah.
It's interesting. Thieves World with Aspirin. Aspirin was interesting.
Yeah, I think Rick Stelly's Cat Lord sums it up very good. It was, but it didn't have no good wilderness map. It was all about the city, and that was it. Yeah.
And it's not like all right. So in the early days, it's not like there weren't competing systems out there or alternates, because Judges Guild was around for the 70s, writing content for D&D. So that was cool, and they made stuff that worked with the basic and the AD&D system. So that was pretty neat. So I don't know if you have competitive stuff going out then, but like Dragonlance, I'm shocked that it didn't sell more. I thought it sold more than that.
Especially with the novels.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Dragons of Autumn Twilight, I think, was the first one, right?
Yeah,
Came out and
that's correct.
And it just changed fantasy publishing overnight, I think.
Well, we got to remember this too. The DL series of adventures that came out, DL1 through DL 800, whatever it was, they all were railroaded adventures, and people weren't too thrilled about it.
Yeah,
you know, the book was great. The hardback book is fantastic. With it, you know, it really goes over stuff real well. But then the adventures were not that great.
But no, you can't play an Urda. Anyone out there in the audience knows I will never let you play the Urda.
Well, I want to point out the Dragonlance number on this chart covers the hardback book, the Tales of the Lance box set, and then I don't think I included I don't remember if I included Dragonlance 5th Age in that number or not, but it doesn't include adventures and it doesn't include novels because those are the two great gaps in my knowledge. Now again, I can tell you very general things like in the early 90s, TSR claimed to be the biggest publisher of fantasy fiction in North America, but that's why that Dragonlance number seems unusually low because again, obviously the book, the novel and the adventures came first and then setting material came afterwards. The Dragonlance Adventures hardcover was the last official work of Weiss and Hickman at TSR for years, actually.
It's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it's really good.
Did they do Tales of the Lance, or was that a re-release by someone else too?
Tales of the Lance, I want to say, was mostly Harold Johnson,
and that's so it was on different. It was different.
What does Drive Through RPG say? Tales.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why Rick Fellis why it wasn't as popular.
I love how the audience is arguing with me that they would play an Urda. Overpowered, OP, beautiful ogres. No, not happening.
All right, let's see what I have.
Okay, wait. Well, Ben, did you? Oh, sorry.
Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman are listed on Tales of the Lance, but my understanding is that it was mostly Harold Johnson.
Okay.
Do you have charts for individual module sales? I think you said no.
No. So the only novel and only adventure numbers I have are for Dark Sun. For Dark Sun, I do have everything.
That's interesting.
But and I'm sure that that'll be coming out soon. But other than that, nothing. And I'm sure that I will say in that Peter Adkison binder, I do have more, but it's like only 94, 95, 96.
Sure.
And all the sales are bad then. So it's
right. Like we don't know
not as illuminating.
How many sales like N1, I1, C1, the old God, because that stuff would be so good to know.
That would be, who knows if you even kept track of that. I like this. This shows you, this shows where everything was, you know, when it was published, and for Greyhawk here, noting that the original glossography is really low. I did not know that. Wow. So, and then when it got re-released in the box set, it really took off.
Yeah.
I'm surprised because
they fall quickly, so to speak. They have that peak and then it drops very quickly, so it doesn't have much of a long tail. It
shows negative sales in 1990 at Greyhawk Adventures. They have a recall.
They
or
return
something?
more than they sell.
Let me it would have been returned product, but let me look at the actual numbers.
It might have been a bad binding on that one too, or something like that.
So Ravenloft Adventure, or Greyhawk Adventures, third from the bottom on this chart.
It could have been. I mean, that's such a great book. And we heard from Jim Ward put together in 3 months, 90 days.
But we are aficionados. We will buy anything that has the Greyhawk logo. We will say, we will buy it. We will hold on to it. Yeah.
Jay, you probably have Greyhawk toilet paper stored away somewhere in your collection. If they make it, people like us would have bought it.
I don't have any of the original figures.
Just scanning over the sales number, the sales number sheet. 90-91 was a weird year. They had a bunch of returns apparently. Like there's other things with like over 10,000 in the negative, which is really unusual. So it's not just Greyhawk. There must have been something weird going on there.
Wow.
But it might have been like you have a couple of examples in the book when they just ship stuff because they're supposed to ship them. They get money from Random House, and then afterwards, and then the hobby sector comes back and they have to take pallets of stuff to put it back in the warehouse and stuff.
Yeah,
so you have a lot of anecdotes of stuff like that.
That shady anecdote you share where they shipped it.
It was Dragon
they
Strike.
double shipped. Was it Dragon Strike?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Dragon Strike. Yeah, the whole that
they got the loan.
The
whole
story about Dragon Strike.
The bill comes due to channel Mordo there.
Valmoku states that B. Dalton abandoned them at that time.
I don't know.
Okay.
B. Dalton, another name lost to time.
Those are the days.
Really was really cool.
But there's a lot of cool anecdotes in your book about when they made a CD-ROM with the rules and stuff like that.
I had the 2.0 of the second edition CD-ROM. I still have it around here somewhere.
There's resale value there. Let me tell you.
What? I gotta find that. It probably has soap.
You gotta have the original box. You gotta have the box.
CD,
I don't have the box.
You can clean it
I have it right there. I can see it right from where I am sitting. So, yep, it's up there. Yeah.
I remember that working reasonably well.
It did. The search was a little wonky on the dragons, but it's okay. It definitely for its time was way ahead of its time.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so Ben, some thoughts on what surprised you? What you're like? Oh my gosh, I'm shocked when you were doing the research for this and writing the book.
I will tell you right now. So about 14 months ago. A fellow historian and researcher, Michael Kalia, sent me documents from the United States Copyright Office. And they were notices that in, I believe, May of 1997, TSR was using its intellectual property as collateral to secure a loan from State Street Bank. TSR was being sued by Random House for lack of payment on its debt. And to keep Random House at bay, they were going to get a loan from State Street Bank. Okay. The intellectual property that they were using as collateral was things like the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Forgotten Realms campaign setting, the Dragonlance campaign setting, which means that if TSR had gone bankrupt and those items had gone up for auction, and one entity had bought the Player's Handbook and one entity had bought the Dungeon Master's Guide, it might have destroyed Dungeons and Dragons and maybe even the tabletop role-playing game hobby. Wow. And in the spring of 97, when Peter Adkison was negotiating the sale of TSR, after they got a look at the financial health of the company, the Wizards of the Coast board of directors said to Peter Adkison, "Why are you buying this trash fire of a company? Why don't you just let it go bankrupt and we'll get it cheaper?" And even though Peter Adkison was not aware that TSR had used that intellectual property as collateral, he argued that they didn't want to lose momentum. They didn't want to wait for it to go bankrupt because people will walk away. It's going to be harder to reconstruct. It's better to just buy it now, even if you pay more, because it will be more valuable. But you could argue that at that moment, Peter Adkison became a man who saved Dungeons and Dragons because he prevented it from going into bankruptcy. He prevented that IP from going up on auction, and he kept everything in one place together under the Wizards banner. Again, when I was on his Twitch channel this past Friday, we talked about that, and he was like, "I didn't know that." He was like, I knew we owed money to State Street Bank, and we paid it off in due course. But he was like, "I didn't even know they put that up for collateral." So he saved D&D, but didn't even know about it. So I found it fascinating that we were all closer to the edge at that time than we knew. The only people who knew would have been the hot uppity ups at TSR, and that would have been it. And the fact that came to me 6 years after I started writing the book, like 6 years into the writing process, new stuff is still coming to me that changed the way I viewed the story. That was a shock and a thrill. And again, I really enjoyed writing this. It was a lot of fun. The research was really enjoyable, but that was a story that shocked and surprised me.
Yeah, maybe there will be more. Maybe Lorraine will come out and there might be more interesting anecdotes. We might not have heard the last of this. That might be, do you think that might be more interesting facts buried that we don't know?
If the Lorraine, if she has documentation of things, that's going to be really, really interesting. If it's an interview, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if Lorraine was like, I wasn't told, I wasn't kept in the loop. A lot of crucial paperwork only had COO Willard Martins's signature on it.
Yeah.
And Lorraine liked yes men and she didn't like bad news. So I can certainly see how it'd be easy to be like, we're just going to ship Random House some extra stuff. We'll get money. We'll tell Lorraine we grossed this much money. And it's true, right? You know?
Yeah.
And maybe it's not until lawyers show up at TSR that she's like, wait, you guys have been doing what? And it wouldn't surprise me if she said that. It wouldn't surprise me if she just said, you know, we did everything we could and it didn't work out. Again, people are so emotional about the topic of the failure of TSR. Like I love interviewing Jim Ward. I love interviewing Jim Ward because he talks to me like he's still a vice president at TSR in 1996. He's still, especially as we went on in our relationship, his answers that he gave me oftentimes changed. But usually his first draft answer is, I'm still a TSR vice president. And even though I think he comes off really, really well in my book, I think that the book is hard for him because he wants to tell a story of like, we were all geniuses and did everything perfect and wizards killed us. And then when I'm like, well, what about these things? Then he's like, well, management killed us. And then when I'm like, you were a vice president, weren't you? Then he's like, but I couldn't do anything. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but you can approve that you can approve that both of these things are right. Imagine, because that there were geniuses everywhere at TSR, but still they managed not to get themselves out of a paper bag, so to speak. It's kind of
And Jim just really wants a story that's more black and white, and he's in the white all the time. And again, he's in poor health. He is a legend. I don't want to pick on the guy.
No, he's
we just had him on. We had Ed, he, and Jeff Grubb on, and we did a Wizards 3 discussion from the Dragon magazines.
Nice.
It was wonderful.
Yeah. I played in one of his games, and there was
Jim got a little down during that discussion. He got a little down during it, and he goes there sometimes. It's understandable.
He wrote on Facebook about how he still has nightmares about TSR sometimes. I mean, it's very vivid for him.
Yeah, it is.
And again, like, his life since then has, he started a game company. It didn't go anywhere. Hasn't really found a ton of work in the gaming industry. He's still in Walworth County, Wisconsin. He has kids. He has a wife, and he has a nice family. But and for a lot of these guys, even for big names like Tracy Hickman's best work was done in his 4 years at TSR in the 80s. That's what everyone wants to talk to him about still with him. Nobody's talking to him about his Batman novel. Everyone wants to talk about Dragonlance or Ravenloft.
Absolutely.
It was an epic time. Myths were made, legends were forged, etc., etc.
In fact, we're talking about the Ravenloft adventure on Sunday on Gabbin. So
that would be my best adventure for D&D ever, and nothing is ever
original Ravenloft. Yep.
Yeah,
that's good timing on that. It just that second generation of, or I guess it would be third generation of people that were in WotC TSR at the time. I lose track. I know. Bruce Cordell was still doing work. Monty Cook, was he still there? I always get him, at this time.
Monty Cook's first week at TSR was the week that the Planescape box set came out, and he said it was like a shot across his bow. He was like, "Oh crap, this is what they're doing at TSR. I got to kick it up a notch here." Bruce Cordell was there. Monty Cook was there. And again, there are a few other names that have gone out of things. Sean K. Reynolds, I want to say, was in internet community management or something.
Right, and they both work for money now. Bruce and Sean.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember who else kind of from that next generation was already there. But it wasn't a super long list.
So Planescape, was Planescape Zeb?
That was Zeb's
Zeb.
book.
So Zeb was still there when Planescape came out, but he wasn't there much longer beyond that, right? Yeah.
Nope. He said that he saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
He said for him it was going to conventions and just seeing fewer faces and fewer companies, and he can't help but notice it just seems a little less popular. So off he goes. Same with Bruce Nesmith.
Yeah. Casey, got any questions?
No, I'm absorbing.
You're absorbing because of all the reading. Yeah. Roger Moore. Yeah. So Roger Moore said the same thing in the past. Yeah. Absolutely. Sean was the internet guy telling people not to share PDFs. Yeah. Back in the day, you had no. Yeah. That was.
See, I've heard about those dark times. I wasn't active on the AOL chat boards or whatever. But one thing I do want to touch on here, I know people are going to be like, oh, it's Gary Gygax Day. I love how Ben just says St. Gary, St. Gary, St. Gary, because I'm in the camp, never meet your heroes. Always let you down. We've learned things about Mr. Gygax in both John's book and, your book. Some people are going to idolize and worship whoever they choose to idolize and worship. But I do appreciate the fact that you are willing to stick your neck out there.
And be smarmy and sarcastic.
Right, because there's members of this community that even if you're right, they're going to disagree with you, or they're going to think you don't have the right to say that. So I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
I think giving a realistic but smarmy portrayal of Gary Gygax is one of the primary complaints about the book. And one person was like, "Look, he did all these good things for my life. I just don't want to hear bad things about him." And I'm like, "Oh, fair enough." But
I saw that comment. That's just putting your head in the sand.
But I think the important bit that I got out of it, and I've read other stuff and also met a lot of these figures, not Gary Gygax, though I never met him. But the interesting to me is you put Gary in perspective when it comes to his role versus what came before and after and during. So that is my take away from it, meaning you put him in perspective. You put what he did compared to what the overall arcing story of TSR, which I think is really important. So he was really, really important for some years and for a lot of setting standards and examples and stuff like that. But you also put that in perspective because you emphasize so much on Lorraine. And to me, that was really interesting because a lot of people, they talk about this era or they talk about that era, but you kind of compare one to the other. And that to me was really interesting. And you kind of talk about the business side behind things, because when we think about as gamers and as fans and as passionate, especially when you're a Greyhawk fanatic, then you think of their creative side, but you also take the business side of things, and that gives another perspective. And I think both those things, that first you have the span before, on and during Gary's era, and then afterwards, and also the business versus the creative side.
Well, thank you for that comment. That makes me feel good, because that's kind of what I was going for. Again, one of the nice things about having the book come out is I'm kind of like, oh, okay, people get it. They got what I was going for. So it's great to hear that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, some people think I'm like hating on Gary Gygax, and I'm like, I don't think I'm. No. I've heard you hate Gary and you love Lorraine, and I'm like, I just think I'm being realistic.
You clearly don't love Lorraine.
Yeah.
No, and the same thing. You give them both praise and really point out things that were their weaknesses, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the weird thing about Gary to me is, I find it deeply frustrating that he just kind of lied in interviews later in life. And I mean, it's your prerogative. Like, I realize he got kicked out of the company. Again, he also just never really did anything great after that. And that had to be really, really hard. Especially, watching the company flounder and thinking, I could have saved it. That had to be really frustrating. But nobody wants to build a statue of him in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, because of his management of TSR. Everyone wants to do it because he's the co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
And, to have him just lie so extensively about his role at TSR. And also, again, Dave Arneson would certainly say that he was not forthright about the way that D&D was created, but that's a John Peterson question to deal with.
Right.
So again, like, I just think that, nobody cared. Like, nobody cared that he tried to raise a shipwreck off the bottom of Geneva Lake. They just care that he created D&D. That's what the statue is for. So, man, don't worry about it, man. It's fine. It's fine.
I think we're going to learn a lot more about that family once his widow has moved on to whatever afterlife awaits her.
Putting a kibosh on a lot of troller game publications right now. I know that for a fact. that they're holding.
She is. She's coming
all
out
the
after
Castle
him.
Zagging stuff. I know they're still sitting on a bunch of it.
Yeah, and that's a whole other topic. Maybe in 5 years we'll. And Jay has had Luke Gygax on his show. I don't know if he's had any of the others on.
Luke is great, and
Right.
it's been wonderful, and go to Garrick on his stuff. And I think that's another thing that comes out when you read books like this and talk about the story, how difficult it actually is to run a business of this size, and also not only running it, because that was Lorraine's prerogative, but Gary also had to build it from nothing, meaning he was a trailblazer. There was no other business, no one have had a tabletop role-playing game business before he had it, so to speak, and he had to start it with, meaning he didn't have a lot of big investors or a lot of money and stuff like that, so he had a lot of things going against him. So in that sense, what he did was a fantastic accomplishment, but he also meant that he did a lot of mistakes, some of it because probably everyone would have made the mistakes because there was no textbook on how to do it, meaning he invented the stuff and ran a company together with others. And I think that's also another thing that we have to realize, that he was, like you point out in the book, Gary was never fully in charge, having all the power of TSR, because he was always doing it with someone else in one constellation or the other, so to speak.
Are you guys familiar with the Gail Gygax article in Kotaku from like 2 or 3 years ago?
I have not read it.
The interview,
No, I haven't
right?
read it, but
Yeah, the interview. So,
It is a wild ride.
Yeah. So long story short, Gail Gygax contacted Kotaku and was like, "Send someone to interview me. People are trying to assassinate me." And Kotaku sends someone to Lake Geneva. They interview Gail Gygax, and she is clearly in mental decline. She tells a ton of stories about people trying to murder her, about people trying to break into her house, and the reporter goes to the police and is like, "Hey, so she reported stuff?" And they're like, "Yeah, she reports stuff all the time. We never find any evidence of anything. Like, no one is trying to kill her, no one's trying to break into her house." And again, it's obvious to me reading the article that she's in some sort of cognitive decline. It seems very, very sad. And Kotaku ran this article. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing here? You shouldn't. Okay, you sent the reporter. Yeah, and like you invested probably thousands of dollars in this article, but once the reporter is there and can see this person in obvious cognitive decline telling crazy stories, it should be the end of
the discussion.
Like, and her son Alex is the son that Gail had with Gary. Alex is like, no, none of this has happened. Like, you run the story that you can't fact check with anyone about this old woman's fantasies, like not even fantasy. Again, it's some sort of cognitive decline. It's very pitiable, actually, and it is. I find it a deeply frustrating example of terrible geek journalism.
Interesting.
Yeah,
because I thought it was enlightening about her mental state and what she.
But
I believe she is doing to impede various Greyhawk intellectual property projects. That just can't go anywhere while she is,
I just remember the fallout, and it must also be terrible for people that's one of the drawbacks of being a public figure, so to speak, and meaning your family, things that should stay private be drawn out in public, so to speak, unnecessarily, and that's sad and tragic.
And I mean, she publicly feuds with Luke Gygax on Facebook. Like, oh my god, like, and again, I have no doubt it's deeply frustrating for you Greyhawk fans who want to see product coming out.
Well, there's a whole bunch of product like the Troller did with Gary in those early 2000s that they had to pull it all. A lot of it. So,
but hopefully, we might. Hopefully, might be a new chapter in the future someday.
I mean, we all know exactly what will happen, which is regrettably one day she will pass away, and then it'll come out. And again, it's frustrating. And again, she isn't preserving his legacy; she's sitting on it.
Absolutely.
But
well, she wants to get paid, right? She's asked astronomical fees. For people to look at it or license it, or when she's just kind of out of her mind with what she thinks it's all worth.
Well, and yet
the only thing she has to cling on to.
She did, Alex. She killed Gygax magazine, and Luke wasn't even allowed to use his own name. Yep. Yep.
I had a conversation with a woman who grew up 3 doors down from Gail Gygax recently. Alex walked her to school, and she said that when she goes to Lake Geneva now to visit her parents, she goes past Gail Gygax's place, and the porch is just filled with junk. And it's got to be Gary's stuff. Like Gary's stuff is just sitting there in the Wisconsin winters. And
it's terrible.
I was like, I know some historians. Like, if you can get us in there, we will go in there and look at the stuff. And I have no doubt, like, the collectors, like Alex Kammer, who runs GameholeCon, like, he is independently wealthy. He pays a lot of money for D&D memorabilia. She can get paid. But ironically, I don't think the money is necessarily in putting out D&D adventures and stuff like that. There's never been money in that.
It's to someone to archive it and make sure that it can be saved for posterity.
She let someone look at some of the stuff, though. It's the archivist who's I should know this. It's not John, right?
No.
Is it?
Let me go to the article and see if it says. But I'd be surprised if it was John Peterson.
No, I thought it's another guy who's like, I don't know. He's involved in researching old D&D Gygax stuff.
We were
Michael Whitwer, maybe?
Huh?
Michael Whitwer, maybe?
Yeah, I'm blanking on it. But anyway, she's let some people take a quick look so that they would get word out there that she has actual valuable stuff, like the original missing maps for...
We thought we may have had them from
Greyhawk.
Leonard. We thought Leonard may have had the original Greyhawk maps, but unfortunately it was a copy. But still.
It was a copy, but yeah.
Yeah, it's still...
Yep.
Oh well. Anyway, this is digressing.
That's
from
all right. This is great.
Great.
So Ben, in closing, like your thoughts on the whole process, the final publication, things you may want to do differently, things you were proud of. Let's hear.
Plans for the future.
Yeah, I know it's a lot, but I really appreciate.
Jay.
I really appreciate you coming on. I want to give you full,
I am
full time for discourse.
I feel both very lucky and very tired.
Okay.
There are about 5 to 7 people who helped me with the book, and if just one of them hadn't, it would not exist probably at all. From my editor at Geek and Sundry to a fellow writer who was like, Ben should write this, to Jim Lauder, who vouched for me with a bunch of the people early on. So again, when I think about the book, I think about just how lucky I've gotten. And again, then all the people giving of their time, people sending me resources and documents. It's crazy when I think about it. And I also, I feel like I'm just kind of sliding into home base still. I have done an awful lot of media, and this is my last interview that I think
I'm so glad you could do one more.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it was fun. I'm putting you on the spot. Now you have to say it was.
I will tell you right now, this is the first interview where it seems like all 3 of you had actually kind of read it, or at least read some of it and kind of grokked it. And I've been interviewed by people who've read a little bit, and I've been interviewed by people who haven't read it at all. And again, that's fair enough. That's journalism, right? Like I've interviewed people about books that I haven't read. But this has been a very fun experience because all 3 of you clearly have kind of gotten the book.
And we know our stuff.
At least part of the TSR and especially the Greyhawk part in AD&D. We've gamed from all these years, and we were purchased the products when they came out and saw it from that perspective too.
Yeah, and again, it was great being on NPR, but they weren't really D&D folk. And after this, I'm going to go downstairs with my wife, and I'm going to eat a cupcake.
Nice,
wonderful.
I get to be like, okay, the media
Take
tour
a breath.
seems to be done. Yeah.
Oh, we really do appreciate it. It's I recommend everyone going and whatever. There's multiple types of ways you can get the book, and there's the link to Amazon. I got it in a day and a half from Amazon. It was quick. So
one question.
Go for it.
When do we get the follow-up?
This one took 6 years of writing on this one. So
that gives us a hint.
During the Ocasio-Cortez administration, maybe. I don't
know. That very good. That sounds very promising.
It'll be a while. But again, I will say though, like I probably have 20,000 words written about 3rd edition D&D that didn't make it into this. So at least I have a start on the second one.
Oh, very cool.
That's a chapter or two.
Yeah.
And now you're also a professor, I think you said earlier.
I teach 7th and 8th grade.
Nice.
Oh, you poor. No, I'm just.
No, it's funny.
Thank
There's
God.
like 90% of 7th and 8th grade teachers stop after 5 years, and I think I'm in my 13th year.
Oh, congratulations!
Wow. Yep.
Look, first of all, teachers in our country don't get enough credit.
Yep.
You're underfunded and you're underpaid. I've got a bunch of friends that are teachers all over this country. So let me just give a shout out to the secondary ed teachers of the U.S.
I'll take it.
In fact, do you guys have role-playing games in your school library?
Yes.
Excellent. If you guys need an essentials kit, let me know, and I will happily send an essentials kit to your library. I love the 5e essentials kit.
I appreciate the offer. I'll mention it to him, but we're pretty well filled with nerds.
That's awesome.
Which helps. But no, this has been delightful. And again, it's especially valedictory for me because I've done it.
Anything else you'd like to shout out, Ben?
John Peterson's work, Game Wizards, I would want to shout out. I would also shout out
cool.
If you want to try a different role-playing game, consider Rest in Pieces, which uses so it uses Jenga as its resolution mechanic.
Interesting.
And it is supposed to be played in less than an hour. You play, you're all roommates, and you're all kind of, slacker, layabout roommates, and you're roommates with the Grim Reaper. And the Grim Reaper causes you problems, and you need to try and solve the problems. But of course, if you irritate the Grim Reaper, he just kills you.
It's not like the Grim Reaper from the second Bill and Ted movie, is it?
I would say that's a good. It's definitely that Grim Reaper.
Awesome.
Like I played it a few days ago, and the problem was that the Grim Reaper had cultists that kept stopping by. They're like sacrificing goats in the living room, things like that. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It's like Rick and Morty. It's very much like that. So
that's cool.
Those would be the two things I would shout out.
Very cool. We're gonna do our own shout outs, and you can hang, or you can just go hang with your wife now at this point, man.
You know what? I'm gonna go hang with my wife if you don't mind.
Ben, thank you. Thank you for your time. Please keep in touch. If you need anything from us, please reach out. Okay, anytime. We had a monster show tonight because you were on, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And maybe in 6 months to a year, we can reach out and have what's happened since then, and how did your tour go? We'll get you and John on the same show with Shannon Applecline.
That'd be fun. That'd be it'd be great to talk to Shannon and John in the same place, even digitally. So do that. I'll be there.
All right.
Great.
Talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Ben.
My pleasure. Bye.
I didn't want to hold him too much longer.
We'll be here another 20 minutes. He doesn't need to hear.
Yeah, exactly. So
it was fantastic.
Hopefully you enjoyed that. That was really enlightening, and he was very gracious. And I think he really appreciated that we all in the audience, everyone. We were probably the most knowledgeable group that he's talked with, which is great.
Well, the questions in the audience were awesome, and I'm glad you were relay some of them.
They were very, very informative. Just note that that one chart, which I'm going to bring it back.
Yeah, let's look at some of his charts.
Yeah,
because it's interesting. He put these together, but he's not like in love with any particular aspect of the game.
So it's coming from a neutral standpoint.
Right. Whereas we're like, ooh, Greyhawk's kicking somebody's ass.
Yeah. So this one, especially with all the settings, was really, to me, is so enlightening on, like, we didn't even talk Birthright. I say Birthright had the potential. It was groundbreaking. The idea was really cool on it, but it was just too late. It was too late at that point. 95. Red Steel was kind of silly, but you can get some ideas for even your Greyhawk campaign out of the Red Steel box sets. There's 2 of them. I got both of them. I never touched Karamikos, Al-Qadim. Hey, it was you had the Cup of Talisman Al-Akbar adventure, which has been placed in Greyhawk. They figured, hey, let's do the Al-Qadim setting. Once again, it's a shame some of these didn't come out earlier.
Is Red Steel isn't the one where they ended up doing the Conan Sonya?
No, they were on
right.
the 80s.
It's just
they're in the 80s.
okay.
Those
I had the
you know how much
what was her name?
worth?
Sonya.
Red Sonya.
Red Sonya. I had the Red Sonya adventure at one point. That thing just shot me right through puberty.
That's it, Val. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that was almost pornographic for.
Yeah, where's Karamikos again? I forget about
Karamikos. Is oh, you mean on the chart?
No, what is it? Yeah, Mystara's not on this.
Mystara. It's a continent.
Yeah, it's Mystara, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And in his book, Ben goes into detail about how they were going to do a Mystara second edition AD&D for the entire known world, but it was too big of a project, so they narrowed it down to Karamikos.
Hollow World wasn't TSR.
No, Mystara. Hang on.
Was Hollow World
the known world, not Hollow World, known world.
Yeah.
Which was the basic setting, right?
Yep.
If I said Hollow World, I meant known world.
Hollow World was not TSR. So, but you get to see like Ravenloft doubled almost Spelljammer sales, and you had a lot of niche. You got to remember too, in the second edition era, you got the green books, you got the blue splat books, you got the brown splat books. You got as a kid. I mean, I wasn't a kid then, but I was in college or whatever, and this was a lot. It was a lot of money. You couldn't. It was so overwhelming at the time. Like, what do I want to get? So.
Oh, I was right. Hollow World is Mystara.
It is a box set for Mystara.
So, I remember things.
Okay.
So.
Wow. It was inside the Mystara. Yes, it was TSR. Okay, I didn't know that. Wow. What am I? Oh, I'm thinking of Harn. No, I'm thinking of Harn. My bad. That's my bad.
Yeah, no.
I'm thinking Harn.
Yeah.
That's me. That's on me.
Familiars.
Yeah.
Bite me.
Very cool. So,
hey, Kitty, we're on Twitch. Quit biting me.
Yeah.
Dinner time.
It was a lot of. It was. You can just see from this. It was just they spread out too much. I mean, once again, management does things that, that's why companies fail. Not every company's successful. So.
And their theory, Ben goes into great detail in his book about this, where he calls it the fish bait theory. They thought Spelljammer would bring in completely new players and dungeon masters. Players don't need to buy all the setting stuff, and that's something 5th edition is kind of also wrestling with, I bet.
Yeah,
players buy players' handbooks. They buy Xanathar's guides. They buy the things that give crunch their characters. Dungeon masters buy the setting books and the Dungeon Master's Guide. You have one Dungeon Master for every 6 players, approximately, throughout the history of Dungeons and Dragons. And I know there's some bleed over. Like, I love to play, but I am usually a Dungeon Master. But this chart here shows, players aren't going out and buying, was that Mastica, the 91 box set?
Yeah.
Look at that, 22,000 sales. I wonder if I have that in my...
Well, a lot of it has, it's just they were throwing stuff up against to see what would stick too, right?
Right.
A lot of it, and that's just the way things worked back, just in that era. It just, they were fighting amongst themselves. So players did buy modules. That's true. So,
well, yeah, 1 or 2 players, right? But in general,
yeah.
Would players like the guys I was running for, they didn't buy anything.
Yeah. All right. So just note, get the book. It's good. I mean, Ben was kind enough to come on. It definitely was a very, very informative discussion. I was really happy that this came together in less than a week. So
I forget when I first messaged you, but it was like, hey,
this came together in less than a week. So that was it.
Yep.
And again, shout out to my LARPing buddy. The LARP, for those of you who are LARP nerds in the audience, I was referencing was InterCon. It's a LARP in New England. It's one of the big ones. It's been shut down for COVID for a couple of years. But if you're into LARPing and you're in New England, or if you want to travel, InterCon.
Yep.
I'll shout out for one of my local LARPs.
Jay, what would suggest be further reading Slaying the Dragon? Well, Jax, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by that.
Like other books on this topic, like Game Wizards. Game Wizards is...
Yeah, that's early. Yeah.
Do Game Wizards and understand it's not going to be as lighthearted. Game Wizards is going to be very much, I don't know, what's just tonally different. It's much more academic.
So LARPing for me equals divorce, by the way. I'm not a LARPer. My wife's like, you're not doing that.
And Playing at the World by it's also by John Peterson.
There you go. Do you have it? Do you have that?
That was okay. Oh yeah, I have it as it's as a Kindle. And
did we ever throw up a link to Ben's book?
Multiple times. I did multiple times.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Right. Cool.
And Playing at the World is really great if you want to know the background, how role-playing game was invented long before, meaning all the inspiration from Braunstein and war games hundreds of years ago, etc. From the very beginning, meaning what was all the precursors to D&D and role-playing games. That's really developed in that's
which one was that?
Playing at the World by John Peterson.
Playing at the World. Okay. Yep. Also, the someone mentioned the Art and Arcana. That is great fun.
Oh yeah, hang on a second. I have that book here.
Playing at the World. For those of you who came here because of Ben, go buy my book, $9.95 on Amazon.
Second time. Yep.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I didn't say the price the first time. I was nervous to have a quote unquote real author. And hey, let me just say, I'm very proud that someone can do this because publishing is not easy. So his
you like
publisher,
yours, I'm liking mine.
Yeah.
His publisher took a flyer, right? Yeah. And said, hey, all right, we'll do this. This seems interesting. 5e has brought back Dungeons and Dragons to the culture. So kudos to Ben and his publisher.
What was that, Anna? Let me show that.
Yeah, Art and Arcana.
I have that too.
Set.
Oh, you have the fancy version.
Yeah, same here. It's downstairs.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Very cool.
People were in the audience were thirsty. I know there's a drinking game for my book references. So you guys can all do a shot now. I know it's been about an hour and a half.
So let's do some shout outs here and then we'll do the giveaway and then we'll raid into someone and see what's going on the rest of the week. It's a great week. We got 3 more great streams coming. So Casey, what's going on, man?
So most recently I published my Seton article in the Orth Journal that Christoph publishes. Gary Holian was kind enough to review my write-up of Seton since it's set in Keelan. So I'm very honored that he took the time to help me with that. And hopefully by now you've all gotten your Orth Journal articles and have taken a look at that. I was really happy with that article since I'm a BK guy. So I was just kind of testing the water, so to speak. I'm still working on my project I call Too Many Gods. I am taking the gods of Greyhawk and I am just saying this god in this pantheon equals this god in this pantheon. These are just different aspects of the same god. And I am creating a hierarchy to narrow that down. That's just me because I think there's too many gods in the game and in Greyhawk and in Forgotten Realms, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something I'm working on. My Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign is entering its 3rd year, or just completed its 3rd year, rather.
Wow, that's awesome, dude.
Year. Yeah. We started with 8. We started with 9 players and we're down to 8, or we started with 8 and we're down to 7. I always forget. They just hit 10th level. And I've been running we're almost at the last adventure in the book, Ghosts of Saltmarsh. So I'm doing some filler because they're supposed to be 11th level. I think it is for the last. My Candlekeep Mysteries group is every other Mondays, and we're going along. They just hit 7th or 8th. And I'm doing each adventure in Candlekeep Mysteries as kind of like a standalone Scooby-Doo, where the players work at Candlekeep, and then, shenanigans ensue, and they go and do the adventure. And then my next big project lurking in my brain is I really do think at this point I'm going to start writing on the unofficial Living Greyhawk history or something with that title. Jay and I and Anna and Mike, we've had enough of these Living Greyhawk shows now where we've gotten some really good deep background info on how Living Greyhawk came to be, where it went, what it was good at, what it wasn't good at. And I think this needs to be memorialized and written down, so I think I'm going to have to start working on that after my wedding reception in 2 weeks. I got married 2 years ago. My wedding reception is in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah,
but then you get to relive it again. That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife and I have dusted off her dress and my wedding suit.
Wonderful.
And
Yep.
we're gonna have a little party here in Massachusetts. And we went on our honeymoon to Ireland at the end of April. That was also 2 years delayed. So
Yep.
we're looking
Congratulations
forward
again.
to yep, to get all that done. And then once that's out of the way, we can go back to thinking, all right, what do we want to do for 2023?
Yep.
Awesome.
Hopefully everyone out there staying safe, still wearing their masks.
Mm-hmm.
Casey, thanks again. This was awesome. We'll get another Living Greyhawk one in shortly. That would be fantastic.
Working on the Pale.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm really going to try and get the Pale for mid to late August.
Okay. Fantastic. Anna, what's up?
I can tell that the first render of Altamira looks really, really good. Full scale render. It took 21 hours and 30 minutes. So that's why I haven't done much else, because my computer has been kind of clogged up with that. So that ended like half an hour ago. So that is, and now we have I have a first splat map and shadow shading map and so on and so forth. So I can start working on the next step of the Altamira project, so to speak. So that's really, really cool. Now I know it seems to really work. So I'm able, I have to put them together because it's like a bunch of, it's 25 tiles. I have to put them together and see if the edges actually match or not. That's the key part, to see if it works or not. So yep.
Very cool.
There you have it's so cute. More cat. Yep. And also so I've been basically for almost 2 days. I did one first that didn't work out. So this was the second go with new settings. So I hope this one worked. So for 2 days, I basically had my computers have been busy with other stuff, but I'm catching up. So it will be, I'm going to sit down and put the credits together. And I got a couple of comments on the 598 map. So there will be a couple of additions. I will update the credits and stuff, and then make sure that the hexes gets done. And so we can kind of put that one out the door by the end of the week. And hopefully next week we can have that one wrapped up. So that means that I need to post the upcoming changes to my Patreon with new tiers and stuff. Going to be presented for that. There will be more heraldry coming out. There will be more a bunch of stuff for my campaign for with new detailed maps, village maps, and stuff like that. New write-ups and things is coming. And that's about it. And on Friday there will be a live map stream on Friday, hopefully with Alyssa as well. So on our usual time, 5 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Yep.
I have a banner for August 26th, but I don't have the logos yet because our guest from last week is DMing for Anna. I'm sorry, game mastering for Anna, Alyssa, myself, and Zach Glazer from Frog God in a Call of Cthulhu game on Friday. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, so we have to. That will be a special Friday special that will replace.
Yeah, that's on the 26th,
stuff, so to speak.
Yeah.
So and we haven't nailed down the next fantasy mapping show, but we have some ideas. So we first have to listen in on when Ed wants to come on, and we have a couple of other guests, but we need to talk to them so in order of importance, and that we're going to keep a secret, so we can see who can come on when, so to speak.
So tomorrow, I'll go through this real quick. So tomorrow night, the Narwhal Headhunters in the Truce. So they're like 4th, 5th level characters. That'll be tomorrow night. All right, normal with the guys. Normal friend game. Saturday night special. Ed Greenwood, Mark Mir, Anna, Tony, Winslow Brill, Eric Boyd, Eric Mengi. The return of 2 drink minimum. Depths of Terror. I'm going to attempt to scare the shit out of all of them. Literally, I'm going to attempt. Mark is playing a dual class human thief illusionist, so he knows what he's doing in old school, which is really cool. Melrod Master Trick. So we'll see what happens in that game. I'm really looking forward to that. And the ironies of this Sunday's Gabbin is we're going to talk to Ravenlofts on the Wall of Fame Strahd and the House on Griffin Hill, and we may go into a couple other ones. I'm hoping to have Tim on there too. And myself and Tim will do classic adventures, and then For all you fat guys out there that all ordered the 2Es and 3Es, because I ran out of them. I ran out of two X's and 3X's. I got more. I reordered the 2X's and 3X's. There's more on the site. They'll be in next week. You can order them now, and I'll ship them out as soon as I get them in. There's all sizes in there, but there weren't any of those. You guys ran through all of them, so I reordered them. If please sign up for the con. It's going to be a blast. Fat guys, you got it. But also the next Saturday night special after that, I haven't even gotten this far out yet, is Return of the Slav Squad, Saturday, August 13th. All right. I haven't had a special guest yet, but all six players have confirmed. So we have that. And in fact, the Mandy's being interviewed on this channel, Tabletop Misfits. That's where I'm going to raid into them. Let's do the giveaway and see who wins, and then we'll raid in. We got 2 giveaways tomorrow night. Jay's gonna hit a wrong button here. I hope not. Let me go back to the main screen. Last call. Casey, you're fine.
Just make it sure.
You're in, man. You're in. All right. Give you all 10 seconds, and I'm gonna close it out. Thank you, audience, for such a great viewership tonight. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope everyone had fun and learned.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. It's a good book. Go spend the money.
Definitely.
There's an audio version.
Yes, there is.
So you can hear it in your car, and there's a Kindle version, which I think Anna has, and then I have the Dead Tree version.
Thank you, Dwayne.
And when you get the Kindle version, you can.
Woden Emrys.
Yeah, you can
winner,
get the
winner
audio
chicken
book.
dinner.
Yeah, you
can
get the audiobook cheaper too. So
Woden Emrys. As long as you're on the claim, let me go into chat and make sure.
Sorry.
You're good, Anna. Are you in here still? Yeah, I see you in the chat.
Oh, there he is.
There you go. He or she. Let me know what 2 things you want. You can do whisper to me, but like here's your choice. You got Castanamir, you got To Find a King, and you got Bane of Llewellyn. You got the Crucible of Freya. You got the Book of Taverns, which is a great book, and you have the Veiled Society, one of Tim's favorite adventures of all time. You get to choose from those. To get 2 of those from those 6. All right, we'll see. All right, we'll get 100. Let's rate in with 100 into this. This is a newer stream. He's a good guy. Let's give him a little love here. They trying to spread out the love here. I'll see you all tomorrow night, 7:30. It'll be another Portrait Works giveaway, so you can get the program that we use. Did you see to 5K? I don't understand what that means. Did you see to 5K? I don't understand what that means there. So thanks. So
thank you.
Yeah. Well, look, I hit
Does
it
it
wrong.
have to do with your hype train or anything? 5K.
I don't know what that.
Number of followers or
No, we got 8,000, almost 80.
You passed
we're pushing 8,400.
Long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see?
We're all stumped.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I'm sorry, I'm lost on that. All right, let me set the rate up. Anytime. Great. The biggest I can get is 3x. If I could get bigger, I get it, but I can't. So that's the largest size I could get. Sorry about that. I know you want a little bigger. All right, please go in. If we all give them a follow, we'll increase his followers by 25%. That'd be really cool. Look at this. All right, 76. That's awesome. 5, 4, 3.
Have a good night, everybody.
1. See you tomorrow night. Have a good one. Turn the sound on so you can hear what's going on.
Yeah. 76.
Followers only chat.
So I lost the sound there.
I can hear it coming from Dennis, I think.
No, it's from Jace.
From Jace, yeah.
Yeah, I hear it from Jace too. It's great.
Oh.
Yeah.